Chapter 1596. In the end, the 2 days of meeting with the Seven Heavens Great Sage ended in an unhappy manner. After that, in order to avoid suspicion, No Name, who had a conflict with the Great Sage of the Ocean-Covered Jiao Demon King and the Great Sage of the Chaotic Heavens Rock Demon King, did not continue to talk with Jiao Lu and Jialing. Instead, they directly returned to the base and let Sarah and Shadora receive the 2 Demon Kings. That was why the members of No Nane didn't know what Sarah and Shadora talked about with the 2 Demon Kings after that. However, if there were any important decisions sooner or later, Sarah and Shadora would have to inform No Name, right? Although it was just a lowest-level community without a name or a flag, there was no doubt that this community had become the main force against AZ Dakaha. With Letitia, Pest and 16th Knight, who all had 4-digit combat strength, as well as Noah, who was their greatest trump card, no one would dare to underestimate him even if he was just a no-name who didn't even have a name or flag. Everyone knew that. In the duel with Aziz Dakaha, this no-name would be the key. For that reason, Sarah and Shadora were sure to tell No Name if there were any major decisions to be made regarding Aziz Dakaha. As long as they knew this clearly, it was not a big deal for Sarah and Sandora to be in charge of receiving Jiao Lu and Jialing. Just like that, the vampire castle once again welcomed night. In the room, Noah and Athena were talking about using the sun's sovereignty to draw out the possibility. As expected, the sun's sovereignty cannot draw out the possibility in your body. It is not that the method is wrong, but even if all the sun's sovereignty's power is added together, it is still not enough, Athena said with assurance. No matter what kind of experiment it is, if there is not enough power, then nothing can be done. Instead of thinking about the method, we should think about how to increase the power of the sun's sovereignty. Increase the power of the sun's sovereignty? Noah could not help but feel distressed. But I already have all 24 sun's sovereignty. The remaining Ophiuchus sovereignty is specially made and cannot be used at all. Even if you can use it, I do not think that at this stage adding another sun's sovereignty will be enough. Your potential is too ridiculous. If you want to turn all of them into power, I do not know if 24 sun's sovereignty will be enough, Athena suggested. So I've thought about it. Since the power of the sun's sovereignty is not enough, perhaps we can start with the sovereignty of other planets. The sovereignty of other planets? Noah was stunned. Not just the sun. In this world, all the stars in the universe have sovereignty, right? Athena reminded him. If the sun's power is not enough, then we can borrow power from the other stars. For example, Luoz's sovereignty, the demon lord of Argel, and the other stars of the other stars also stars had their own stars. Athena was aiming for the sovereignty of the other planets. But the stars of the other stars should not be as special as the sun's sovereignty, right? Noah was not optimistic about this idea. The sun's sovereignty has endless uses, which is why it needs to be divided into 24 parts. However, the stars of the other stars are not as special as the sun's sovereignty. Most of them can only be used to summon the star spirits and star beasts of the corresponding stars. Can they really be used to develop potential? Perhaps the stars of the other stars are not as useful as the sun's sovereignty, but they are valuable in terms of quantity, Athena said. If we obtain the stars of the other stars, together with my wisdom, we may be able to develop a similar use for drawing out possibilities. But I do not know how many stars of the other stars will be needed to achieve this. Noah sighed. In addition, there is the possibility of failure. The path we are walking is extremely difficult. However, if you are able to successfully reach the end, then my fated person, you will become an existence that no one can rival. Athena seemed to be delighted by the challenge of this matter. She looked at Noah with a flirtatious look in her eyes. I have nurtured countless excellent warriors, but I have never met such an incredible seedling like you. If I can nurture you into a supreme existence that no one can rival in countless worlds, then I will have completed a legend that even the gods could not complete. It is undeniable that I am looking forward to it. Athena's words made Noah laugh involuntarily. It was indeed very similar to the idea of the former queen of the gods. Unfortunately, Noah still felt that Athena's grand wish was unrealistic. To be able to gather all 24 stars of the sun's sovereignty, it was completely a coincidence and a joke of fate. As the saying goes, an unintentional willow grows. Noah did not have the idea of getting the sun's sovereignty at first, but he got the sun's sovereignty one after another. It was not until recently that he got the opportunity to gather the sun's sovereignty by relying on the self-destruction of the gods. If he did not have millions of gods as hostages, how could it be so easy to find 2 sun sovereigns from the gods and 6 sun sovereigns from the Queen of Halloween? Even the sun's sovereignty had to go through so many twists and turns before he could get it. How could it be so easy to get the sun's sovereignty of the other stars? Admittedly, obtaining the sovereignty of the other stars was definitely not as difficult as obtaining the sovereignty of the sun, but if he wanted to gather the sovereignty that could draw out the huge possibility of Noah's body, he didn't know how many sovereigns he had to find to be useful. Moreover, it would definitely take a lot of time to execute, and Noah could not stay in this world forever. Therefore, Athena's idea was not bad, but it was a little unrealistic. At least Noah did not want to adopt this plan. Knock, knock, knock. Just as Noah was about to explain to Athena, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock, Noah and Athena turned their heads at the same time and looked in the direction of the door. Athena left him with a message. You and I will discuss this matter later. After saying that, Athena's body shone with platinum light and turned into a small platinum sword. She landed on the bed next to the silver sword and quietly stayed there. Only then did Noah speak. Come in. Not long after he finished speaking, the door to the room was pushed open. The people who came in were somewhat out of Noah's expectations. It was Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling. Therefore, Noah spoke in surprise. Why are you here? Are you surprised? Jiao Lu smiled helplessly. We just wanted to have a chat with you. That's why we asked little Sarah and little Sandora about no namespace and the location of your room. It's not good to come uninvited, but we are not so rude that we don't know anything. Jiao Ling raised a bottle of wine in her hand. Her cold and beautiful face was much gentler than it was during the day. You wouldn't reject a guest who brought wine, right? Maybe other people are like that, but I don't have any obsession with wine. Of course, I don't hate it either. Noah spread out his hands. Anyway, take a seat first. Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling looked at each other, and then looked at Noah at the same time. What a surprise. Jiao Ling said straightforwardly. I thought that after the unpleasantness during the day, you would dislike us. It's not that I dislike you. After all, what I said was a little too much. Noah smiled bitterly. I'm really sorry. I don't know why I was so angry at that time, so my tone was a little too harsh. I hope you can forgive me. Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling both smiled when they heard this. You didn't do anything wrong. It's our fault. Jiao Lu sighed. We only feel grateful and apologetic towards you, who failed to live up to our expectations. It's a little too late to say this now. Jiao Ling raised the wine bottle in her hand. So, as an apology, at least let me pour you a cup. After that, the 2 monster kings sat down. Chapter 1597. On the round table, 3 wine glasses were placed on top of it at an unknown time. Noah, Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling sat in a triangle and chatted about some unimportant topics. Jiao Ling seemed to be serving Noah and poured wine into Noah's cup. Noah raised his cup and took a sip. Then he raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Jiao Lu clearly noticed Noah's behavior and couldn't help asking. Is the wine not to your liking? That's not it. Noah shook his head. The wine is good, but I thought you brought some spicy wine. I didn't expect you to bring some sweet wine. I'm not planning to drink to my heart's content. Sweet wine is enough. Jiao Ling continued to pour wine into Noah's cup. If you want to get drunk, it won't be too late to drink until we're done with Aziz Dakaha and have a celebratory feast. Oh. Noah looked at Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling. So you're saying that you're prepared to fight alongside us? Since you've said that, if we don't pull ourselves together, we'll be letting down the great sage of the ocean cover. Jiao Lu smiled bitterly and drank his wine. Also, what you said is right. If Big Sis Monkey King said so, she wouldn't ignore the Demon King who threatened Box Court. If we forget Big Sis Monkey King's righteousness, then we would be letting down those comrades who sacrificed themselves for our righteousness. The battle between the 7 heavens and the heaven realm was known as the battle that split the box into 2. In that battle, they believed in the great sage, Heaven's Equal. They believed that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was the king of legends. They fought side by side with the 7 demon kings and attacked the heaven realm. Leading such an army, the great sage of the Heaven Equal was able to fight against many gods and attack the heaven realm. However, after that battle, the sacrifices were equally terrifying. As the leader, the great sage of the heaven equal was suppressed. 2 out of the 7 heavens were killed. Many Asura gods and Buddhas who believed in the great sage of the heaven equal, and the other demon kings died in battle. Too many people had died in that battle. Although we have never regretted it, for those who believe in our justice and fight with us to the death, if we continue to live with such a disappointing appearance, how can I face them? Jiao Lu tasted the wine with some melancholy. I didn't even understand this principle. I've been like a vagrant for who knows how many years. Now that I think about it, I'm really ashamed. To be honest, when I first saw second brother, I didn't even believe that he was the man known as the great sage of the ocean cover. Jialing glanced at Jiao Lu. I originally planned to teach second brother a lesson if he planned to continue living like that in the future. Then I really escaped a calamity. Jiao Lu laughed involuntarily. Compared to me, ever since the 7 days of war, you and Big Brother Bull Demon King have been very active. At that time, I thought you were going to continue to fight against the gods of the heavenly realm. In truth, we are indeed resisting. Jialing corrected him. It's just that no matter if it's the gods or us, we don't want to trigger another war like the past. Yes, Jiao Lu said with a sigh. Too many people died in that battle. Since it was a war, it was impossible for there to be no bloodshed and no injuries. It was even more so for the war with the Taoists, Buddhists, Immortals, and the 12 heavenly guardians. The conversion of the great sage of heavens equal to heaven might be a major reason why Jiao Lu became so dispirited. At the same time, too many people died in that war, causing the Demon King to be extremely tired physically and mentally. That was probably the reason why he became so dispirited. Noah didn't know how tragic the war between the heavenly realm and the heavenly realm was. However, just by thinking about it, Noah could imagine how many people died. Undoubtedly, so many people died, but the great sage of heaven's equal was still able to persevere and maintain his righteousness. Even when he was under the watch of the Buddhists, he still didn't give in. Noah couldn't help but praise him. Perhaps I understand why you were willing to follow the half-star spirit and fight against the gods in the heavenly realm. Jiao Lu and Jialing couldn't help but show some pride when they heard that. To Jiao Lu and Jialing, following the great sage of heaven's equal should be a very honorable thing. I'm also beginning to understand why sister returned to the heavenly realm without worry. Jialing looked at Noah and said sincerely. It's because she saw the hope of saving boating from you. That's why she left without worry, right? Yes, Jiao Lu said with absolute certainty. If she didn't trust you, that gentle and kind sister wouldn't have left the lower world without worry and let Izidakaha, this disaster, threaten the heavenly realm, right? Just like how the great sage of heaven believed in Jiao Lu and Jialing's righteousness, Jiao Lu and Jialing also believed in the great sage of heaven's equals righteousness. Since Sister Monkey King chose to believe in you, we will also believe in you. Jiao Lu raised his wine glass and toasted Noah. Let us lend you a hand in the battle against the great demon king. At this moment, Noah sensed a burning flame in Jiao Lu's eyes. It was a flame that bid farewell to the ashes and reignited life. The domineering aura of a demon king once again returned to the chest of this demon king named Jiao Lu. Hence, Noah looked at Jiao Lu quietly and asked slowly, "We only met today and our first meeting was so unpleasant. Even so, you still choose to believe in me without reservation?" "I just believe that our sister doesn't misjudge people." Jiao Lu smiled without wavering. "Moreover, right now, I can feel that your heart contains a sense of justice similar to ours. You can't stand to see innocent people suffer. When you need someone to stand up and fight, you will definitely stand up." Jialing also raised his wine glass and toasted Noah. "Just like what second brother said, you have the same sense of justice as us. Back then, it was for this sense of justice that the 7 of us led many mountain deities and demons to the heaven realm." Jiao Lu raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke. "Although the end result wasn't good and could even be said to be tragic, we don't want to overturn this sense of justice. Although it is more or less strange for us who have been branded with the Devil King's brand to say these words." Jialing smiled sweetly. "However, if you want to protect this box, let us walk side by side with you." Hearing Jiao Lu and Jialing's heartfelt words, Noah remained silent for a while before he finally smiled. "I don't even know if there is justice in my heart, but if I ruin the trust of others, I won't be able to forgive myself. Noah raised his glass and filled it to the brim. I'll leave my back to you, brother Jiao Lu, Miss Jiaoling. Just call me Jiao Lu. Jiao Lu laughed. Although I don't know if my skills have deteriorated, if I can't even protect someone's back, it proves that I'm only at this level. Call me Jiaoling too. Jiaoling also smiled knowingly. I don't know how far I can go against that human in the final trial, but I still want to tell you to leave it to me. The three of them clinked their wine glasses on the table. With a ding sound, they downed their wine in one gulp. Immediately after, Jiao Lu said this solemnly. Actually, before we came here, we paid a visit to the White Night King. The White Night King said that Azidakaha will break out of his seal in the next 2 days. Jiaoling continued Jiao Lu's words. So, we have to make preparations. What's there to prepare? We've already finished everything before you came, Noah said calmly. Now we can attack at any time. Is that so? Jiao Lu's eyes flashed. Since that's the case, there's no need to continue waiting, right? That's right, Noah said resolutely as he raised his wine cup and allowed Jiaoling to pour wine into it. Let's set off tomorrow. Jiao Lu and Jiaoling nodded at the same time. Chapter 1598. The next morning. In front of the throne hall of the Castle of Vampires in the vast square, many people were gathered in groups, occupying every corner of the square. In the center of these groups there was a flag flying. The sight of so many flags fluttering in the wind was truly a spectacular sight. At the very front of these many flags, there were 6 flags fluttering in the wind. The ruler of the East District, the flag of the community where White Yaksha was, 1,000 Eyes. The ruler of the South District, the flag of the community where Sarah was, Dragon Horn Griffin Lion. The ruler of the North District, the flag of the community where Shadora was, Salamandra. And as strong reinforcements, although there were only individuals, each of them had 4-digit combat power, the flags of Halloween Queen, the Great Sage of the Ocean Cover, the Dragon Demon King, and the Great Sage of the Chaotic Heavens Rock Demon King. Just like that, the 6 flags stood at the forefront of the many other flags, fluttering in the wind. All the flags present, including these 6 flags, were about to go to the terrible battlefield and fight the most terrible demon king of the community. At this time, these communities raised their flags one by one, telling the people of the world that they participated in the battle that would determine the future of Hakata. It was believed that after today, the reputation of these communities would be strengthened, surpassing those communities that were under the gods and avoided the battle. And among the communities here, only one did not raise its flag. No name. As the key and main force of this battle, there was no community that could promote its name and boost the morale of the members. If it was in the past, even if no name participated in this battle and did not raise its flag, no one in Hakata would know that they had sacrificed themselves for this and threw themselves into the battle with the awareness of sacrificing their lives. But now, even if there was no flag that could promote its name, all the communities present, and even everyone in other places in Hakata, knew that no name had participated in the battle. Because, in this community, there was a person who had already become an existence that everyone knew. With a simulated star map, another cosmology, that was more than 3 digits above the box court, he had sealed millions of gods and held sovereignty over all 24 suns. Today, there was no one who did not know that such a person had become the trump card against Azidakaha in no name, which had neither a banner nor a name. Because of this, even without a flag, everyone clearly knew that this community of people was active in the front lines of the war against the oldest demon king. At a certain moment, everyone present raised their heads and looked at the throne hall in front of them. There, a group of people walked out of the minister's hall with strong and powerful footsteps. Oh! The moment they walked out from the throne hall and saw the neatly arranged flags fluttering in the wind, 16th Knights, Fei Niao, Yao and Pest simultaneously let out cries of surprise. Obviously, none of them had seen such a spectacular scene before. Only Letitia, Jiao Lu, and Jiaoling showed a nostalgic and sad expression. It's been a long time since I've seen so many flags flying together. When I see this scene, it reminds me of the past. Yet, as a member of the old No Name, Letitia had once followed the great alliance of Stratum rulers to conquer the north and south. She had crusaded against countless demon kings and even destroyed and sealed the oldest demon king. At that time, the great alliance of Stratum rulers was also as spectacular as this, right? As for Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling, there was no need to mention them. In the previous 7 days battle, as the demon kings of the 7 days, Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling had personally led many mountain gods and demons to attack the heaven realm. Therefore, the scene of many flags fluttering in the air was not unfamiliar to Demon King Jiao and Demon King Rock. Not to mention these people, even Sarah and Shadora felt a sense of pride when they saw the flags fluttering in the square. As for Black Rabbit and Ren, they showed loneliness and unwillingness. Undoubtedly, it's such an important battle, but we don't have a flag that can inspire us, Black Rabbit said dejectedly. I'm really unwilling. Yeah. Ren was also somewhat dejected. I really want to take back the flag as soon as possible. Hearing Black Rabbit and Ren's words, the expressions on the faces of 16 knights, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, and Pest's faces gradually darkened. A feeling of unwillingness arose in their hearts. That was to be expected. Think about it, everyone could raise the flag of their community with their heads held high, but only their community could not participate. What kind of feeling would that be? They would definitely be unwilling, right? Not to mention people like 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Yao, who had extremely high self-esteem, would definitely be extremely unwilling. Seeing that everyone more or less revealed a lonely and unwilling expression, Noah said indifferently, "There's nothing to feel pity about. Our flag is on Azedakaha's body. When I take down that lizard, step on his corpse and take our flag from his body, I will definitely raise our flag in the center of the battlefield and declare victory." Hearing this, the gloomy eyes of No Name's group instantly lit up. All right. 16 Knights laughed out loud. That sounds very cool. Raise our flag in the center of the battlefield. Flying Bird displayed a beautiful smile. That would be great. Yes. Yao nodded repeatedly. That would definitely be very cool. Yes. Even Black Rabbit was excited. It would definitely be super cool. Then don't be awkward. Noah smiled. Right now, we are in front of all the communities in the box court. Even if we don't have a flag, we should still raise our heads and stand with our chests held high. Otherwise, how can we tell others that we will be victorious? The members of No Name all burst into laughter at once. Only then did Noah raise his head and look at the plaza in front of him. Among them, the flag belonging to Will-O-Wisp was flying in a corner. Under the flag, Vera, Aisha, and Jack waved their hands at Noah. However, they did not make a sound. Instead, they followed the solemn atmosphere of the plaza and silently waited for the order to be given. Other than Will-O-Wisp, the other communities also focused their gazes in front of the door of the throne hall, looking at Noah and his group. Under such circumstances, Sarah took a step forward. Next, we will begin the final battle with the Demon King and the triple digits. Sarah took a deep breath. Everyone here has participated in the previous battle against the Demon King. You should all know how much sacrifice we have made in that battle. As soon as she said this, many of the community members' faces were filled with sadness. As if to dispel the sadness, Sarah cried out loud. However, everyone, I want to tell you that it is not that we have no hope of winning. The sacrifice at that time will never happen again because we already have the most powerful trump card. He once sealed millions of gods with his own strength. He gathered all the sovereignty of the sun and achieved an unprecedented feat. He has obtained the trust of the White Knight King and the recognition of Halloween Queen. Even the great sage, Heaven's Equal, has hopes for him. At one point he had forced Azedakaha into a corner and pierced through his heart. He was only one step away from victory. Under the leadership of this human hero, we will definitely achieve victory. Sarah raised her hand high. So comrades, let's shout for our future. As soon as he finished speaking, shouts that resounded through the sky shot straight into the clouds. That voice shook the atmosphere and caused everyone's hearts to boil. Thus the war began. Chapter 1599. It was unknown when it started, but layers of dark clouds began to appear in the sky, blocking the bright sunlight and revealing a stifling aura. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Bayasha raised his head and looked at the sky that revealed a stifling atmosphere. His expression was somewhat uncertain. Has it finally begun? As he said this, Bayasha saw it in the next second. In the sky filled with dark clouds, an ancient castle slowly peeked out from the clouds and continuously descended until it reached a certain level before stopping. Immediately, A large number of black shadows began to rush out from the ancient castle. They were like raindrops falling from the sky, densely sprinkling down. Under Bayasha's gaze, the main body of the black shadows began to appear. It was a sea of people that were not limited by race. Some of them landed on the ground and quickly arranged themselves neatly like an army. Some of them were hovering in the air, riding on fire dragons that looked like winged dragons, looking down at the earth below. Not long after, in front of Bayasha, a grand army filled with a grand aura suddenly took shape. At the very front of the army stood someone Bayasha recognized. "You're here? Brat." Noah, who clearly heard White Yuksha's voice, raised his head slightly, met White Yuksha's gaze and said this. "I've made you wait, Bayasha." With that, Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling, who were standing on either side of Noah, stepped forward and also met Bayasha's gaze. "Long time no see, White Knight King." Jiao Lu had a suspicious smile on his face, but he said straightforwardly, "I never thought that one day I would actually see you in such a wretched state. It is indeed a good thing to live for so long." The White Knight Demon King who once caused the entire Hakata to complain endlessly, the absolute invincible Demon King who ruled the center of the universe, has now fallen to the point of guarding a seal? Jiao Ling said with a tone that was both mocking and admiring. "It really doesn't seem like your style. Great Sage Fu Hai? Great Sage Hun Tian?" Bayasha was startled at first, but then he was pleasantly surprised. 2 of the 7 days actually came. Although we're here, we're not the main characters today. Jiao Lu rolled his shoulders. Even if it's 7 days against a monster like the final trial, even if Sister Monkey King came, she would still be helpless, right? That's why we're only here to help, White Knight King. Jiao Ling snorted. The real main force is someone else. Even I would like to say that it is a joke to be able to make 2 demon kings willing to help you, but I know that there is someone who can do it. Bayasha laughed bitterly and turned his gaze towards Noah. "Brat, have you really decided to make a move now? My seal can still be maintained for a few more days. You've already done what you need to do. You've also perfectly accomplished your goal of stalling for time, White Yuksha." Noah smiled leisurely. His tone carried an indescribable pressure. "Leave the rest to me." After saying that, Noah lifted his feet and slowly walked in the direction of White Yuksha. Following Noah's footsteps, a terrifying divine power slowly rose from his body and turned into a flame. Like a flame, it surged in all directions. Rumble. As if in response to that terrifying power, the entire ground began to tremble. Under the trembling ground, a similarly frightening aura rose. It was like a volcanic eruption as it violently charged forward. Crack! At a certain moment, cracks appeared on the ground. In the bottomless underground, an alien was lying in this space that was so dark that not a trace of anything could be seen. The cold ground constantly took away the warmth from its white limbs. This was a very harsh temperature and environment for reptiles. However, for the alien lying here, this temperature and environment was no different from a child's play. Although its appearance was similar to a dragon, Azidakaha's essence was closer to that of a god or a demon. In addition, as a human's final trial, no matter how harsh the environment was, it was impossible for absolute evil to fall. Therefore, the 3-headed demonic dragon lay in this harsh environment, as if it had fallen into hibernation. Originally, as a natural demon king and the evil god of the fire worship sect, Azidakaha was more inclined to use his great power to ravage everything like a storm rather than meaningless sleep, subduing stubborn warriors with strength, breaking through cunning strategists with stratagems, giving hellish punishment to humans who did not understand fear, giving unwarranted despair to challengers who overestimated themselves. That was the Demon King. As a Demon King, even in such a situation, he should have used his absolute strength to break free from the chains and return to the surface. He should have wiped out all those fellows who obviously couldn't deal with him, but still tried to use tricks like sealing him, bringing despair and fear to him. However, in the past, Azidakaha had been sealed many times and was already used to this situation. Therefore, instead of wasting energy to struggle, it was better to slowly accumulate power before the seal was broken. After all, this seal would not last much longer. Letting the beings on the ground sing about the meaning of life during this period of time, creating hope that had no future. When they broke out of the seal, they would give them irresistible despair and use violence to crush all hope. That would be a kind of pleasure. When he thought about the despair and fear that people would show when their hope was crushed, the evil god of the fire worship sect could not help but grin, immersing himself in a joy that others could not understand. What was true despair? It was the feeling when one saw their hope being crushed. If it was for the sake of seeing a more flavorful hell, then before that, giving others a little bit of time wasn't something that couldn't be done, right? At this thought, Aziz-Dakaha continued to doze off with a sense of pleasure. However, in the next moment Aziz-Dakaha sensed it. An extremely terrifying power suddenly appeared on the ground. Feeling the terrifying power, the three-headed dragon suddenly opened the eyes on all three of its heads. Aziz-Dakaha was all too familiar with that power. No, it was not right to say that he was familiar with it. To be more precise, it should be said that this power left a deep impression on Aziz-Dakaha. Is that so? The three-headed dragon raised its head and looked up, as if it could see someone on the ground. Its red jade-like eyes were filled with ruthlessness and joy. Did you survive? Ever since it became the final trial for humans, the three-headed dragon had become synonymous with despair. To the three-headed dragon, the gods in the heaven realm were just prey. To the three-headed dragon, the people in the underworld were just trash. Only a true human hero could suppress a true demon king. However, it was impossible for a human to defeat a three-digit demon king in a one-on-one battle. Therefore, there was only one thing that humans could do from the beginning to the end. That was to use everything that the human realm could do to challenge the three-headed dragon. In other words, the three-headed dragon did not view any human as an enemy, but the entire human race. However, this idea was shattered 2 months ago. At that time, a mere human had forced the demon king named Aziz-Dakaha, who numbered in the hundreds, into a corner and even killed him once. Aziz-Dakaha still could not forget the power of the god and devil domain that the other party displayed and the blow that pierced through his heart. Only then did Aziz-Dakaha experience the true fear of death. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the final trial for humans, the three-headed dragon revived and ruthlessly pierced through the stomach of the careless human hero. At that time, the three-headed dragon did not feel any sense of accomplishment, only endless regret. It was not easy for an existence that could suppress a demon king to appear in the human world, but he died just like that. The three-headed dragon felt very regretful. However, it seemed that the other party had survived. A human hero. Have you come to challenge me again? At this moment, the three-headed dragon abandoned its previous plan and released a terrifying aura. Then let's try to suppress absolute evil. The dark space began to collapse. Chapter 1600. Crack, crack, crack. The heavy ground was like a block of ice as it began to crack bit by bit, emitting a hair-raising sound. An indescribably terrifying aura filled the entire area. Like an erupting volcano, it constantly surged up from the ground and surged to the surface. Under that terrifying pressure, everyone's expression changed abruptly. Without any hesitation, they began to retreat. This included White Yaksha, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground at the beginning. He also turned into a ray of light and disappeared on the spot like melting sunlight. In the blink of an eye, only Noah, whose body was burning with astonishing divine power, was left standing on the trembling ground. He seemed to be indomitable as he stood there without moving. Although the entire ground was trembling, only the small area where Noah was did not shake at all. That scene was very unbelievable. As a result, the trembling ground around him frequently cracked, but not a single crack spread to Noah's location. The ground around Noah was instantly covered in cracks like a spider web. It wasn't until a certain moment that the trembling ground suddenly stopped. Boom! In the next moment, the ground that was covered in cracks suddenly exploded, lifting up huge rock fragments. It was as if the ground was collapsing, constantly falling down. As a result, a huge bottomless pit appeared in front of everyone. And in the center of this bottomless pit, there was a piece of ground that looked like a stone pillar that had emerged from the depths of the ground. It was completely intact. Noah, who was standing on top of it, did not look at the bottomless pit around him. He only looked ahead. There, a pure white three-headed dragon, carried by a pair of pitch-black wings, gradually rose from the bottomless pit. It did not stop until it rose to the air in front of Noah. The eyes of the human hero and the natural demon king instantly met, bursting with sparks. Powerful auras surged from Noah and the three-headed dragon, as if colliding with each other. They filled the area, resisting each other as they each occupied half of the sky. Seeing Noah alone exude an aura that was on par with the humans in the final trial, the people riding on the backs of the pterosaurs in the sky felt excited. More than a month ago, when Noah had left this world, the various communities present had also started a duel with Azidakaha. At that time the casualties were quite heavy. 16 Knights, who was one of the main forces, was heavily injured and unconscious. Deaths occurred in the various communities one after another. In the end, at least 70% of the Alliance's forces had been killed or injured. Only less than half of them had survived. As a result, White Wuxia, who felt despair, could only use his authority as a host in an attempt to seal Azidakaha. However, Azidakaha's short-lived eruption had weakened most of his strength. All he could do was guard a seal that would lose its effectiveness at any moment as he desperately struggled. At that time it was undoubtedly hell. However, today, there was a human who stood resolutely in front of the three-headed dragon with his own strength. He exuded an aura that was not weaker than the other parties. Looking at the figure that was much smaller than the three-headed dragon's back, everyone felt a sense of indomitable majesty. Their fear of the Demon King was immediately reduced to the lowest point. Under such circumstances, Noah looked straight at the three-headed dragon opposite him, a faint smile appearing in his deep, dark eyes. Should I say long time no see? Hearing this, the three-headed dragon ignored Noah's sarcastic tone. 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes stared at Noah as he spoke in a deep voice. You seem to be different from before. Is there anything strange about it? Noah said with an indifferent expression. Humans are creatures that constantly change. Some learn from the lessons of the past to grow, while others sink into the failures of the past. I'm also a human and I can't stay the same. As long as this change isn't a bad thing, so what if I change? In other people's ears, Noah's words were nothing more than pure logic. However, in Azidakaha's ears, these words gave off a different feeling. Is that so? The three-headed dragon's voice began to carry a trace of pressure. You have already seen through the essence of humans. Have you seen through the essence of me, a human's final trial? Noah did not directly answer the three-headed dragon's question. Instead, he casually said this. Last time you told me that you won, but you did not pass the final trial. Saying this, Noah looked at the three-headed dragon with a dazzling light in his eyes. This time I want to see if you, a human's final trial, can stop me, a human's steps. Hearing Noah's words, the three-headed dragon's red jade-like eyes flashed with an ominous glint. Its 3 sinister mouths curled up. You want to pass me? A human's hero? The three-headed dragon's spiritual core began to swell. Then show your true value to absolute evil. After saying this, the three-headed dragon raised its 3 heads and let out a resounding roar towards the sky. Gyiwa. That was a roar that could shake the heavens and earth. Just like when it had first broken free from the seal in Blazing Flame City, the three-headed dragon let out a terrifying roar towards the sky. The roar caused the atmosphere to shake and waves to surge. It was like the most berserk of attacks that swept in all directions. Wherever the violent shockwaves passed, the ground would once again crack open. Like extremely fragile glass, it shattered and collapsed one after another, falling into a bottomless pit. In the sky, 16th Knight, who was riding on the back of a pterosaur, was speechless. Is it really a monster? Azidakaha, White Wuxia, who had appeared on the back of a pterosaur at some point in time, had a change in expression as he loudly shouted, "Quickly retreat!" Everyone in the Alliance army that was fighting against Azidakaha had a shocked expression. Seeing the terrifying shockwave sweeping over, they hurriedly wanted to retreat. However, in the next second, a voice resounded in the berserk waves. Shut up! As soon as the voice fell, bang! Following a shocking muffled sound, the terrifying roar came to an abrupt end. Whoosh! A black shadow rubbed against the air and flew out from the center of the shockwave set off by the terrifying roar, causing a sharp sound as it broke through the air. It heavily crashed into the only intact stone pillar in the middle of the bottomless pit, smashing it into pieces. Soon after, The black figure was covered by a large amount of rocks and debris as it fell into the bottomless pit. The shockwave that swept through the entire world suddenly stopped. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at the three-headed dragon's location. However, the three-headed demonic dragon had already disappeared from that place. In its place was a swaying scarlet dragon shadow, Noah, who was floating in the air. Seeing this scene, everyone understood. The black shadow that had just flown out was the three-headed dragon. The three-headed dragon that had once caused great casualties to the Alliance army that was subjugating the Demon King had suffered a heavy blow from Noah. It stopped roaring and was instantly sent flying. Realizing this, everyone's mouths began to slowly open. Noah just looked down at the bottomless pit below. Deep in his heart, on the outline of the stone plate, two patterns were shining. One was giant. The other was Dragon Emperor. At the same time, he activated two incarnations. The scarlet dragon shadow on Noah's body began to slowly expand. Whoosh! At this moment in the bottomless pit, a black shadow cut through the air and rushed over. It waved its sharp claws in Noah's direction. Facing the sharp claws, Noah directly raised his hand and punched out. The sound of the collision resounded through the heavens and the earth. Chapter 1601. Dong! A shockwave rippled out in the air and spread in all directions in a ring shape. It sent the people riding on the pterosaurs flying, causing them to cry out in surprise. In the center of the shockwave, two streams of light flew out and rushed into the sky. They were like thunderbolts chasing after each other, circling and colliding. Dong 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 dong. When the two streams of light collided, there would be a deafening muffled sound in the sky. It was loud enough to pierce one's eardrums, causing the entire sky to tremble. Rings of shockwaves accompanied by the collision of the two streams of light were blasted away one after another, dispersing most of the clouds in the sky. The Alliance army, who couldn't interfere at all, could only stare blankly at the two streams of light that were chasing each other, colliding with each other, entangling with each other, and spinning with each other. What are you still standing there for? Jialing finally snapped out of his daze and spoke with some difficulty. Aren't we going to chase after them? Chase after what? Jiao Lu laughed bitterly. That's a human and a demon king who can rival a million gods. In a battle of that level, other than the White Knight King, no one here can intervene, right? Lord White Yuksha. Black Rabbit quickly looked in White Yuksha's direction. Can you help Mr. Noah? No, if I go, I'll only be a hindrance. White Yuksha shook his head without hesitation. I'm a pure star soul. I'm not human and don't have the fire worship sect's spiritual lattice. If I go, I'll only be imitated by Azidakaha's another cosmology and become stronger. At that time I might not be able to deal with him. In fact, it was because of this reason that in the previous battle, White Yuksha could only provide support behind the scenes. He let 16th Knight, Letitia, and Fei Ceres be the main force to challenge Azidakaha. Until the Alliance army suffered great casualties and 16th Knight was severely injured, White Yuksha could only go into battle and use his authority as the organizer to seal Azidakaha. Therefore, if White Yuksha joined the battle, it would only make the situation worse and would not be of any help. Then what about now? Fei Niao asked unwillingly. Could it be that we can only watch from here? Don't worry, Fei Niao, Yao said softly. We have our mission. That's right, Letitia agreed. Our mission is to annihilate Azidakaha's split body. Those clones don't know anything like another cosmology. This is the time for us to show off our skills, Pest advised him. It was rare for Pest to be so kind. As for that Demon King, Master will not lose to him. Everyone could only nod their heads one after another. In the crowd, 16th Knight raised his head and looked at the two streams of light that were colliding with each other in the distant horizon. Terrifying shockwaves were created, and heavy loud noises were heard. Don't lose, bro. Dong. After an unknown number of collisions, Noah and the three-headed dragon were sent flying out simultaneously amidst the strong gales from the impact. The atmosphere was stirred up into a mess. Noah's body shook slightly. He instantly scattered the powerful force acting on his body and stabilized his flying body. Soon after, he lifted his head and suddenly looked in front of him. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Almost at the same time, in the clouds in front of him, streaks of pitch-black shadow blades sliced through the air and parted the clouds. Under the sharp sound of the air being torn apart, they shot toward Noah like raindrops in a violent storm. Each shadow blade had the power to cut open the earth. In front of the shadow blades, the so-called steel was as fragile as tofu. Even with LV6 SSS durability, and the magic of sword protection to weaken physical attacks, if Noah was hit by such a shadow blade, he would only end up being cut in half. Of course, that refers to the situation where there is no defense at all. Now, Noah has the air scale protection of the Dragon Emperor avatar, so it is not impossible for him to block the attack of the shadow blades. Boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge, boost, supercharge. A voice sounded on the crimson dragon shadow that covered Noah's body, causing the crimson aura to soar. At this moment, the defensive power of the air scale was increased by countless times, causing the crimson dragon shadow to flash with a clear scale pattern. Carrying the soaring crimson dragon shadow, Noah did not retreat but charged forward, shaking the atmosphere like a cannonball, charging forward. Clang, 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 clang. The shadow blades that were enough to cut open the earth fell on the crimson dragon shadow one by one, but in the midst of a crisp sound, they caused bursts of sparks and were bounced off one by one. The next moment, Noah faced forward and suddenly stretched out a hand. Wong! The crimson dragon shadow on Noah's body suddenly trembled, and along with Noah's action, one of the dragon claws suddenly expanded dozens of times in an instant, turning into a ferocious and terrifying claw. It fiercely stretched out and grabbed a cloud of mist in front of it. Bang! Under the violent force, the cloud of mist exploded like a rubber ball. In the cloud of mist, the three-headed dragon was tightly held in the palm of the huge crimson dragon claw, like a puppet, being tightened little by little. Woo 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 woo. In the ferocious and terrifying dragon claw, the three-headed dragon, who was constantly being tightened and squeezed, let out a painful howl. Poochie poochie poochie. With a series of tearing sounds, the skin of the three-headed dragon, which was constantly being tightened by the ferocious and terrifying dragon claw, began to explode as if unable to bear the burden. Bright red blood sputtered out and splashed into the sky, falling onto the ground like a heavy downpour. In the next second, the bright red blood on the ground, mixed with the soil, wriggled and turned into ferocious two-headed dragons, roaring at the sky. When the army, which was on standby, saw this scene, they were all energized. "They're here!" Shadora yelled in a delicate voice. "Sister Sarah." "Got it," Sarah ordered without any hesitation. "Everyone, it's time to test us. Let's go," Faith Reese shouted in a low voice. "Don't let any of the clones get to His Excellency Noah's side." "Yes, sir," a response rang out. Then the army, which was on standby in mid-air, charged toward the two-headed dragon army. A moment later, they confronted the roaring two-headed dragon army head-on. In the distant horizon, Noah glanced at the situation on the ground. When he saw that the two-headed dragon army was entangled with the Alliance army, not a single one of them had been left behind, his heart more or less relaxed. Roar! At this time, the veins on the three-headed dragon's body bulged, as if it was possessed by a deity. It roared fiercely and suddenly opened up the huge dragon claw that was tightly holding its entire body. It rushed out, and the dragon shadow behind it turned into a huge shadow blade that chopped down. Poochie! This time, the air scales didn't block the shadow blade, and the ferocious and terrifying dragon claw was cut off by the equally huge shadow blade. Then the huge shadow blade made a turn and drew a perfect arc. It flashed through the air and slashed fiercely in Noah's direction. This time, Noah didn't dare to directly rely on the air scales to block the combined power of the three-headed dragon's dragon shadow to form the shadow blade. Hastily, he stepped into the air and dodged. Swoosh! The shadow blade that flashed by immediately and fiercely cut through Noah's position, leaving a faint mark in the air. "You're quite capable, aren't you?" Noah paused and looked at the three-headed dragon with a sharp gaze. "Then, let's see how you'll turn danger into safety next time." In the depths of Noah's heart, on the outline of the stone plate that represented the authority of the 10 avatars, besides the giant and dragon emperor, a third image began to flicker. Chapter 1602. Sky vs. Earth 1 vs. 1. The two battles between legions were still ongoing. On the ground, in the battle between the Alliance Army and the Twin-Headed Dragon Army, the Twin-Headed Dragon Army had the upper hand. After all, this was different from the Twin-Headed Dragon Army that Maxwell had transported to the Vampire Castle. This time, the Twin-Headed Dragon Army that was confronting the Alliance Army was made up of the first-generation clones that were directly split from Azedakaha's body. The first generation of avatars were all at the level of deities. In the Alliance Army, the number of people who could stop the first-generation clones could be counted on one hand. Moreover, the three-headed dragon's body could also split into the second-generation, third-generation, and fourth-generation body. Under such circumstances, as time passed, not only did the Twin-Headed Dragon Army not weaken, it even showed signs of growing stronger. If this continued, sooner or later, the Alliance Army would be drowned out by the endless Twin-Headed Dragon Army. Wouldn't they all be wiped out? Fortunately, in the Alliance Army, there were still a few four-digit high-level combatants. Letitia, Pest, 16th Knight, Jiaolu Jialing, and Fei Si worked hard and took more than half of the first-generation clones. Letitia's shadows turned into countless pitch-black weapons, chopping and turning the twin-headed dragons into minced meat one after another. Pest's wind of death swept out, causing black and white spots to appear on the bodies of the twin-headed dragons. 16th Knight swung his fists continuously, blowing up the twin-headed dragons one after another, not even leaving behind a bone fragment. Fei Si, on the other hand, was using a whip sword to charge into the army of twin-headed dragons. Every time she slashed, a twin-headed dragon would be cut in half. As for Jialing and Jialing, one of them raised a huge wave that scattered the twin-headed dragon army, slowing down the offensive of the twin-headed dragon army to a large extent, giving the Alliance Army a chance to catch their breath. The other one even waved his scorching golden flames, burning the twin-headed dragons into ashes one after another. The twin-headed dragons didn't even bleed, dying directly in the flames, unable to split. It was because of these people that the Alliance Army was able to block the attacks of the twin-headed dragon army. Of course, even if the Alliance Army was in danger, nothing would happen. That was because there was still a terrifying existence in the Alliance Army. The Sun Star Spirit, White Yaksha. Even though they had lost the sovereignty of the 14 suns, they could still display the terrifying power of the most powerful species. White Yaksha's attack could instantly kill several, or even dozens of first-generation avatars. With the strongest star elf holding the fort, it was impossible for the Alliance's victory to be shaken by a mere clone. However, as time passed, not only were the clones splitting apart, but the three-headed demonic dragon's hot blood was also sprinkling down from the sky, causing the number of first-generation clones to continuously increase. However, this situation not only did not make the Alliance Army afraid, but instead made everyone's aura even more terrifying, and they killed even more energetically. There was no other reason other than the fact that every time the two-headed dragon army gained a first-generation body, it meant that Azedakaha was bleeding. Since Azedakaha was bleeding and the first generation's body parts were increasing, it meant that the three-headed demonic dragon's spirit level was continuously decreasing. If this continued, the weakness of Azedakaha's heart would be exposed once his Ling level reached its lowest point. At that time it would be the time of Azedakaha's death. Thus, every time hot blood was sprinkled down from the sky, every time the two-headed dragon army gained a first-generation body part, it meant that Azedakaha was walking closer to death. It was because they knew this that when the Alliance Army saw the number of first-generation two-headed dragons increase, not only did they not lose their fighting spirit, they instead became more and more courageous, as if they were trying to drag down every single one of the clones to death. White Yaksha and the others were naturally happy to see such a situation. However, everyone knew that the two-headed dragon army was only an additional opponent in this battle. The only true enemy was Azedakaha. Only when Azedakar was defeated could the battle be declared a success. Otherwise, even if the Alliance Army defeated the two-headed dragon army, it would be useless. White Yaksha, Jiaolu Jialing, and No Name's group could only fight while silently watching the battlefield in the distant sky, praying for Noah's return. Roaha! In the distant sky, the three-headed dragon's ruthless roars continued to resound, setting off a terrifying whirlpool of air that swept across the entire sky, shaking all directions. However, if one listened carefully, they would be able to discover that although the three-headed dragon's roars were ruthless and terrifying, there was also a faint trace of anxiety. Chi. At this moment, a figure like a mirage, bringing along a series of light and shadows as it violently swept over like a ghost, instantly flashing in front of the three-headed dragon. Bang! The three-headed dragon did not even have time to react before its chest took a heavy punch. Its three heads all spat out mouthfuls of blood, and its body flew backwards. After splitting the clouds behind it into two, it flapped the wings formed by the dragon's shadow on its back and stabilized its body. However, at almost the same time, the illusory figure that was like a mirage once again flashed behind the three-headed dragon like a ghost. A scarlet-red dragon shadow on his body swelled, grabbing a ferocious and terrifying dragon claw, and heavily smashing it onto the back of the three-headed dragon. Boom! A terrifying impact exploded from its back, shaking up a ring of energy. The three-headed dragon only felt an unparalleled, terrifying force ramming into its body violently from its back, causing its organs to explode and blood to seep out from the shock. Immediately afterwards, the unparalleled force sent the three-headed dragon flying like a cannonball once again, unable to fight back at all. The three-headed dragon could only endure the intense pain from various parts of its body, as it was secretly shocked. When did he become so strong? It could still remember that over 2 months ago, although Noah was able to compete with it, and even slightly surpassed it in terms of pure battle prowess, he was not so strong that the three-headed dragon could not resist. However, from the very beginning, Noah's strength had suddenly skyrocketed, beating the three-headed dragon to the point where it could not fight back at all. He's probably at the top of the 3 digits. He can even rival over gods and god-kings. At the very least, in the three-headed dragon's memories, the only person who could firmly suppress the current Noah was the Halloween Queen, who was on par with the 2-digit existences in terms of pure strength. In other words, the current Noah was already at the top of the 3 digits. The Halloween Queen, who was an exception among the 3 digits, was one of the existences that could surpass Noah. Only 17 people were left. When did he become so strong? This question had been lingering in the three-headed dragon's heart. This was because the three-headed dragon did not know that with Noah's authority, every time he used another clone, his strength would skyrocket. Now Noah was using 3 clones at the same time. The giant with terrifying strength, the dragon emperor with extremely strong defense, the phoenix with unparalleled speed. Combining strength, defense, and speed, Noah's battle strength instantly skyrocketed, reaching the top of the 3 digits. Thus, Noah, who was carrying a huge crimson dragon shadow, rushed through the sky at lightning speed. Like a phantom, he flashed across the boundless sky and caught up with Izidakaha, who was flying backward. With a spin, he kicked out and heavily kicked the three-headed dragon's chest. With a thunderous sound, the three-headed dragon's 3 heads once again spat out blood. Its entire body was kicked into the air, and like a kite with a broken string, it plummeted toward the ground. The intense pain caused the three-headed dragon's 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes to flash with a ruthless bloody light. Don't underestimate absolute evil. With a roar, the three-headed dragon did not care about its plummeting body. It fiercely turned around and faced the sky. In the next instant, the three-headed dragon opened its ferocious dragon mouth wide. Suddenly, a surge of flames rose in the three-headed dragon's mouth. Seeing this, Noah's eyes suddenly focused. Could it be that? Chapter 1603. Izidakaha's original form was a human king, who was led to depravity by the evil god Angora Manuel. This human king had 2 ferocious snake heads on his shoulders. He turned into a demonic dragon and did all kinds of evil. In the end, he even destroyed a third of the entire world. In other words, from a mythological point of view, Izidakaha was the evil person who destroyed a third of the world. And this inheritance allowed the three-headed dragon to receive a corresponding gift. The gift was called Hegemon's Halo. That was an inheritance that could destroy a third of the world. The three-headed dragon was proud of the most powerful gift of the flash element. Now the flash flame that could destroy a third of the world was gathering in the three-headed dragon's fangs. The space around the flames that gathered in the dragon's mouth began to distort. The surging flash flame kept compressing in the three-headed dragon's fangs. It carried an extremely terrifying wave of destruction, causing the world to tremble. No, It was not the world that was trembling but the world. In the face of this gift that could destroy a third of the world, the entire world was trembling because of the terror. In the end, this phenomenon angered Noah. Gift that could destroy a third of the world. Noah was so angry that he laughed. Who allowed you to take out that kind of thing? In the depths of Noah's heart, on the outline of the stone plate that represented the authority of the 10 incarnations, the 3 incarnations of the giant, dragon emperor, and phoenix, that were blooming with dazzling light all began to dim. And as if to replace the giant, dragon emperor, and phoenix incarnations that were dimming, the image representing the white horse incarnation lit up. At this moment, on the outline of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 images, the sun that was branded on it also bloomed with dazzling light. Within the sun's brand, 24 engravings bloomed at the same time at this moment. Noah faced the sky and raised his hand high. For victory, quickly come before me. Undying sun, please bestow upon me a shining steed, a spirited steed. Bring me the halo that symbolizes your Lord. The words that summoned the new sun turned into an invisible ripple that reverberated across the entire sky. At this moment, the originally extremely thick layer of dark clouds in the sky began to slowly dissipate. On the ground, everyone in the Alliance army that was fighting against the twin-headed dragon's army sensed the abnormality and subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky. In the next second, everyone saw it. Amidst the scattered layers of thick dark clouds, a sun slowly rose. That's... White Yuksha's eyes lit up as excitement began to appear on his face. That brat's sun power. Not only White Yuksha but even the group of people from No Name opened their eyes wide because they recognized the sun. In the past, in No Name's base, Noah had encountered Galgi, who had concealed his identity and came to test him. At that time, Noah had already used the White Horse incarnation. Therefore, regarding the power of the White Horse, whether it was the White Yuksha who had caused its reaction or the people of No Name, they had all seen it once. Because of that, the crowd immediately recognized the true form of the sun. Jiao Lu, Jiaoling, Sarah, and Shadora all had expressions of disbelief. Could that be the power of the sun's sovereignty? For those who had never seen the power of the White Horse, it was natural for them to think this way. Among the group of people, only the quick-witted 16th Knight noticed that something was wrong. That sun, compared to the previous one, clearly doesn't match? Yes, if it was someone who was familiar with Noah's White Horse, they would definitely be able to notice. Compared to before at this moment, the sun that Noah summoned using the White Horse was clearly different. In the past, the sun that Noah summoned using the White Horse incarnation was only a condensation of the sun's power, not a real sun. However, at this moment, the sun that Noah summoned using the White Horse was no longer a condensation of the sun's power, but a real sun. Using all of the power of the 24 sun's sovereignty, using the incarnation of the White Horse to create a sun. In this real sun, a bright golden flame exploded and gathered in the center of the sun, gradually turning into an extremely handsome white horse. The majestic white horse suddenly opened its eyes that were full of intelligence. It raised its upper body and let out a high-pitched neigh. Neigh! The high-pitched neigh shook the entire sky, causing everyone on the ground to tremble and almost kneel on the ground. That aura was telling everyone that he was going to make a move. Now the white horse that Noah was using was very different from the white horse he used before. Especially the three-headed dragon, in the depths of its heart, it felt an extremely strong sense of danger. And this sense of danger also angered the three-headed dragon. In front of my sure kill hegemon's halo, just a mere sun disappear for me. Amidst the furious roar, the flames that were compressed in the three-headed dragon's fangs became sluggish, and then suddenly exploded. Like a dragon's breath, a beam of fire shot out from the three-headed dragon's ferocious and terrifying mouth, dyeing the entire space in a fiery red color. It evaporated the atmosphere, distorted the space, and rushed straight towards Noah's direction. Staring at the huge beam of fire that shot towards him, Noah's deep black eyes also flashed with a fierce light. Then let's test out the mere sun you speak of. Earth Lizard. If he only relied on the power of the white horse, it was absolutely impossible to compete with the strongest gift of the lightning element, which had the ability to destroy 1/3 of the world. However, in this month, although Noah did not succeed in using the sun's sovereignty to explore the possibilities in his body, He inadvertently found out that the sun's sovereignty could be used to increase the power of the white horse, increasing the power of the white horse to a level that far exceeded when he used 2 or even 3 incarnations at the same time. Thus, in the center of the sun high up in the sky, the divine white horse suddenly stepped on the air. Amidst the shock of space, it suddenly descended from the sky. Its entire body swelled with extremely terrifying and bright flames, bringing along a meteor-like flame trail. It heavily collided with the huge beam of fire that shot towards the sky. Rumble! An earth-shattering explosion finally resounded in the sky. Amidst the thunderous explosion, the entire sky suddenly trembled. Immediately after, a terrifying firestorm swept across the sky, instantly turning into a sea of fire that covered the entire sky. It raged violently, evaporating all the clouds that could be seen. A terrifyingly high temperature that was enough to incinerate everything instantly descended upon this world. On the ground, everyone in the Alliance army let out a sorrowful cry. Their skin was actually baked red by the high temperature. Even the twin-headed dragon army seemed to be emitting smoke as they roared continuously. Undoubtedly, that sea of flame should be at least 3,000 meters in the air, but everyone on the ground far away was affected by the heat. If one were to be directly immersed in the sea of fire, no, as long as they were within 1,000 meters of it, even their bones would be melted by the high temperature. It was so terrifying that everyone in the Alliance army was shocked. Under such circumstances, the terrifying waves of fire rolled in the sky and continued to spread. Roha! Amidst the terrifying sea of flames that could cover the entire sky, the three-headed dragon's pained roar suddenly rang out. That roar was filled with extreme pain. Even the members of the Alliance army who were far away on the ground could hear it clearly. Immediately, everyone who was looking up at the sky saw it. In that terrifying sea of fire, a figure covered in scorch marks fell out. That was the three-headed dragon. Meanwhile, in the chest of the fallen three-headed dragon that was covered in scorch marks, a heart was shining brightly. The weakness of Azidakaha's heart was finally exposed. Chapter 1604. Heart. That's the heart. Azidakaha's heart. The Demon King's heart. It's finally exposed. At this moment, everyone in the Alliance army was overjoyed. Not to mention the others, even White Yuksha, Flood Dragon, Jialing, Sarah, Shadora, Facey, and the members of No Name were overjoyed. Good job, bro. 16th Knights shouted out. He really dug out the heart of that lizard all by himself. It hasn't been dug out yet. Student 16th Knight. Flying Bird could not hide her excitement. However, if the weakness of the heart is exposed, we're only one step away from victory. That's right. Yao looked at the three-headed dragon in the sky. If it's Noah, he'll definitely be able to do it. It's too early to be happy now. Letitia warned. Don't forget, we also have our own mission. Come. Pest's mood was unprecedentedly high. No matter what kind of mission it is, I can complete it now. The three-headed dragon's weakness was exposed, and everyone saw the hope of victory. At this moment, the morale of the Alliance army was high, and they suppressed the two-headed dragon's army. As expected of the person chosen by Sister Monkey King, Flood Dragon laughed. Looks like I can't fall behind. Sister's foresight has always been better than ours. Jialing smiled. A man that even the White Night King and Halloween Queen acknowledge is indeed extraordinary. However, just like what Letitia said, it's too early to be happy. White Yuksha looked at the sky and muttered. Please, kid, let me witness the birth of an epic-making hero. Bang bang bang. In the distant sky, the terrifying sea of fire that engulfed the entire sky was still surging. Occasionally, there would be explosive sounds that would make people tremble in fear. The three-headed dragon that fell from the sea of fire felt intense pain all over its body, and its heart was filled with disbelief. My sure Kilhegemon's halo was actually blocked? How could it just be blocked? Since the three-headed dragon had been severely injured, and even the weakness of its heart had been exposed, this proved that the opponent's strength had not only blocked the most powerful gift of the flash type, but had also suppressed it and pushed it back, directly injuring Azidakaha. During this time, the blood that splashed out from the three-headed dragon's body was completely evaporated by the terrifying high temperature, before it could be converted into a body. Immediately, the three-headed dragon's heart was exposed. This fact made the three-headed dragon's heart was filled with unprecedented fury. Without a doubt, the reason why the three-headed dragon was able to become invincible was because of Avesta, the three-headed dragon's god, the gods of the heavens realm, and the millions of gods were afraid of being killed. However, the three-headed dragon was not proud of the Avesta's power, but the tyrant's halo. This was because Avesta was the entire fire worship sect's cosmology and symbolized the entire fire worship sect. On the other hand, Hegemon's halo was a myth that only belonged to Azdakaha. That was where the three-headed dragon's true pride lay. Now this pride was blocked and even suppressed. The three-headed dragon felt as if its existence was being denied, and an indescribable rage rose in its heart. However, the angrier it was, the calmer it was. The three-headed dragon shook the black wings on its back and stabilized its body. Ignoring its charred and smoking body, it raised its three heads and stared at the terrifying sea of fire above. Who? In the rolling sea of fire, a figure walked down step by step as if he was walking on flat ground. With the terrifyingly high-temperature sea of fire as the background, Noah's robes fluttered in the wind as he walked down step by step as if he was walking on flat ground. He met the three-headed dragon's gaze and spoke with extreme calmness. Have we finally reached this point? Yes. The three-headed dragon did not hide the shining heart in its chest. It was as if it was not worried that its heart would be pierced. It raised its head and puffed out its chest, facing Noah resolutely. To be able to force me into such a desperate situation by yourself, and twice at that, from ancient times until now, you are the only one. As one of the pillars of the gods, I acknowledge your bravery and bravery. You are a hero of humanity. You are also one of the top existences among the enemies I have faced. There is no need to belittle yourself. Noah said with a somewhat ruthless tone. However, here you will become my stepping stone, a strong enemy in my life. Yet you are unable to stop my footsteps. It is time to end this. The arrogance of mankind has always been one of the most important factors that threaten success and victory. The three-headed dragon looked coldly at Noah. You only made me reveal my weakness, yet you're already so arrogant and conceited. Have you forgotten the lesson from last time? You are the one who has forgotten, right? Noah glanced at the three-headed dragon. Before the start of the battle, I've already said this. This time it will be different from the last time. Then I also said the same, right? The three-headed dragon's three heads all revealed a sinister smile. If you can do it, then try. Just as the three-headed dragon was about to charge in the direction of Noah, an unexpected situation occurred in the sky. A space suddenly began to distort, turning into a door. Pung! The door suddenly opened, and from inside, a large group of people flew out, like bees in a hive rushing out in groups. Noah and the three-headed dragon both paused and looked at the sky. Not only Noah and the three-headed dragon, but even the people of the Alliance army on the ground raised their heads and looked at this scene. Looking at the large group of people rushing out from the door in the sky, Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light. Not because of anything else. This was because the people who came out of the door all carried the aura of the gods. That's right. The people who suddenly descended were the gods of the upper level. Although it was a lot less than the millions of gods last time, there were at least dozens of them or even hundreds of them coming out of the door. The one leading them was the ancient wind god from before. Leading hundreds of gods, the ancient wind god descended from the sky. Looking at the terrifying sea of fire that almost covered the entire sky, the ancient wind god's heart trembled. From the sea of fire, the ancient wind god felt an unimaginable wave of destruction. If he was trapped in it, even if the ancient wind god was the strongest of the three, he would not be able to escape, right? Then the ancient wind god saw the three-headed dragon's heart shining in his chest, and his heart jumped again. However, when the ancient wind god looked at Noah, a look of hatred appeared in his eyes. Hundreds of gods descended from the sky, and in an instant, they surrounded Noah and the three-headed dragon. Looking at the gods surrounding them, Noah and the three-headed dragon's eyes turned cold. Noah looked straight at Ancient Wind and said emotionlessly, "Don't worry, Ancient Wind. What do you want?" There was no doubt or questioning. He just spoke calmly, as if he was just going through the motions. In the eyes of the Ancient Wind Divine Spirit, Lin Fan's calm demeanor was extremely hateful. However, the ancient wind god did not show any hatred. Instead, a fake smile appeared on his face. "We are here to help you deal with the Demon King." After saying that, the ancient wind god's body surged with a shocking aura, and even his spirit level expanded. As if they had agreed, all the gods sneered, and their spirit levels expanded one after another. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with the power of the gods. How stupid! The three-headed dragon was so angry that he laughed. "You dare to interfere at such a crucial moment, and the opponent is a god? Fine, I will accept it all." After saying that, the three-headed dragon raised his hands and crossed them in front of him. Avesta activate. Counteract each other in turn. Simulate Star Atlas. Another cosmology. Dazzling starlight bloomed on the three-headed dragon's body. Then the three-headed dragon's aura and spirit level expanded, as if there was no limit, and they kept rising. In the blink of an eye, they had risen to 3 digits and were now above 2 digits. Chapter 1605. Wang. At this moment, the three-headed dragon's spirituality expanded without limit, causing the terrifying sea of fire to tremble. It was as if it was being blown away by the gigantic spirituality that rose from the three-headed dragon's body, causing it to gradually disappear. The three-headed dragon's 3 heads all stared at Noah, carrying a terrifying power that far exceeded the 3 digits of Box Ting's 3-digit number. "Your luck is very bad, human hero." With Noah's strength, if the battle continued, it would not be difficult for him to deal with Aziz Dakaha, who had exposed his heart weakness. However, at this moment, hundreds of gods suddenly interfered and released their spiritual cores, causing the situation to deteriorate to the worst stage. With Avesta, those gods that targeted the three-headed dragon and released their spirituality would all become nourishment for the three-headed dragon. At this moment, the three-headed dragon used another cosmology to imitate the cosmology of all the gods in the 100 gods group, obtaining the power of all the gods in the 100 gods group. This power instantly pushed the three-headed dragon's strength to the double digits, even surpassing it. With the three-headed dragon's current strength, Noah could no longer win. As for the gods in the 100 gods group, they surrounded the area as if they were watching a good show. They only released their spirituality and had no intention of interfering. Seeing this scene, who couldn't guess what the gods were planning? These gods wanted to use the three-headed dragon to murder Noah. Therefore, the gods in the 100 gods group only released their spirituality and allowed the three-headed dragons another cosmology to treat them as enemies. They would imitate them and increase the three-headed dragon's strength, but they had no intention of interfering. Seeing how the gods maintained a distance from the door in the sky, it was likely that if Noah and the three-headed dragon decided to target them, they would immediately escape and leave the battlefield. From this distance, even if Noah and the three-headed dragon both used another cosmology, these gods would still be able to escape before another cosmology was activated. It had to be said that although it was sinister, it was quite effective. This way, Noah and the three-headed dragon would not be able to threaten the gods of the hundreds of gods. Bastard! On the ground, White Yiksha also saw through this scheme and was furious. Those bastards, how dare they do this? Driven by his fury, Bayasha wanted to charge forward. However, he was stopped by Letitia and Pest. "Don't you go," cried Letitia. "Just leave it to Master." "What?" Bayasha was furious. "Don't you see that your master is in deep trouble right now? Open your eyes wide and look carefully, Star Spirit of the Sun. When has my master ever displayed a dangerous appearance?" Pest mocked. "Master has been guarding against the gods from the start. You don't have to worry. Just watch quietly." Only then did Bayasha realize that Noah's performance was extremely calm from beginning to end. At that moment, Bayasha could only suppress the impulse in his heart and quietly watch the development of the situation. In the sky, Noah looked around at the gods and Buddhas who were watching a good show. Then he looked at the three-headed dragon calmly. "What? Do you want to be used as a tool by others?" "Don't worry," the three-headed dragon said coldly. "After I deal with you, I will make those stupid things pay the price." In other words, to the three-headed dragon, Noah was the enemy. The gods were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Then there was no need to consider which side to deal with first. "Is that so?" Noah nodded slowly. Then he suddenly spoke. "However, Azidakaha, unfortunately, you can't win against me. I have already solved the mystery of why you became the final trial of the human race. After saying this, in the depths of Noah's heart, the image of a warrior holding a golden sword lit up. Before the evil god of the sect of fire, the three-headed demon dragon Azidakaha fell. He was the prince of the Arabian region Zakaha. In the Persian epic, he was destined to become the demon king Azidakaha. Dazzling golden swords flashed in the space around Noah. That is, the three-headed dragon's eyes suddenly shrank, and he roared. You even have the sword of my detestable enemy, a hero of the human race. As he roared, the three-headed dragon flapped his wings and shot toward Noah. That speed was indescribably fast. Compared to before, it could not be compared at all. However, facing the three-headed dragon that was charging at him at such a terrifying speed, Noah only stretched out a hand. Zakahar was chosen by the evil god, and he used a devious scheme to seize the throne. 2 ugly dragon heads grew out of his shoulders, and he used terror to control his people. Of course, this king who was reduced to a 3-headed demon dragon was eventually chased off his throne by the heroes of the era, and was sealed within a giant mountain. Even so, he still destroyed a third of the world. The golden swords hovering in the space around Noah suddenly tilted and pointed in the direction of the 3-headed dragon, then shot out at high speed. Seeing this, the 3-headed dragon hurriedly stopped its body, and with a flash it flew up. Considering the inheritance of destroying a third of the world, Demon King Azidakaha, the first thing that can explain why you became the final trial of the human race would be the period when the permafrost collapsed due to the abnormal activity of the sun. It was as if the gold sword had eyes of its own. It drew a perfect arc in the air and soared into the sky, chasing after the 3-headed dragon. The melting of the permafrost in the South Pole will cause the water level to rise. In this situation, a third of the Earth's land will be lost, but the collapse of the permafrost is not enough to bring the end of human history, and bring humanity to the end of the world. Brand new golden swords flashed in the space around Noah, and under Noah's control, they shot toward the sky, turned a corner, and continued to rush toward the 3-headed dragon. Humans will be destroyed by their own hands, and the cause of this destruction is the essence of the final trial of the human race. If the destruction was not caused by humans themselves, then the final trial of the human race would not be born. Therefore, as the final trial of the human race, you should be the embodiment of the cause of the human race's doomsday, and not a natural disaster. Under the extremely clear command, 2 waves of sword rain that were as resplendent as gold streaked across the void. Like arrows that had been released from a bow, one above and one below, they instantly surrounded the 3 dragons. Only now did the 3-headed dragon, who was paying attention to the golden sword rain behind him, notice the golden sword rain above him. He was shocked and hurriedly stopped himself. Just as the 3-headed dragon was about to dodge to the side, golden swords appeared out of thin air, and neatly lined up around the 3-headed dragon. Once you think of the doomsday that humans can cause, then an overdeveloped civilization is one of the factors that must be considered. Noah continued his pursuit, and continuously chanted words to create new golden swords. Azidakaha, you are the embodiment of absolute evil. Then, the true explanation for you being the final trial of the human race is to explain the doomsday caused by the malice of humans. Therefore, the doomsday that your spirit points to should be the combination of technology that can destroy the planet, and the malice that uses this technology. The golden swords immediately joined the encirclement of the 3-headed dragon, and neatly lined up around the 3-headed dragon. The tips of the swords trembled, and all of them pointed in the 3-headed dragon's direction. In your mythology, the legacy of destroy a third of the world refers to the development of technology that could destroy the planet's environment, while the legacy of seizing the throne because of an evil god refers to the appearance of malicious authoritarians who use that technology. The overlap between the two is the real reason why Azidakaha became the final trial of humanity. The golden swords pointed at the 3-headed dragon immediately shot out, and like bullets they rained down on the 3-headed dragon. Chapter 1606. Swish, 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 swish. Thousands upon thousands of golden swords flashed past the pure white body of the 3-headed dragon. The sharp blades mercilessly cut through the body of the demonic dragon. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The golden sword cut through the 3-headed dragon's skin cleanly. With a clear tearing sound, Wounds appeared on the three-headed dragon's body. Roaha! The three-headed dragon finally let out another painful roar. That roar caused the expressions of the gods in the group of gods, who were watching a good show, to freeze completely on the spot. Impossible! The fake smile on the ancient wind god's face also disappeared, replaced by shock and disbelief. Even the humans in the final trial, whose numbers are in the double digits, can't do anything to a single human? How could such a thing happen? Unfortunately, no matter how unwilling the hundreds of gods were to believe it, it was the truth. In the face of this unchangeable fact, Noah continued to calmly chant the words of victory. The technology that could destroy the planet and bring mankind to the end of the world was misused by those in power with malicious intentions, ultimately leading to the end of the world. Therefore, as absolute evil, you became the final trial of mankind, the best interpretation of the destruction caused by the malicious intentions of mankind. Noah couldn't help but think of Maxwell when he sang up to this point. The hypothetical demon that originated from thermodynamics had the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, thus becoming an undying and indestructible existence. It could even use the method of space jumping to control the avatars of the three-headed dragon, making them fight for itself. Then why was Maxwell not affected by the twin-headed dragon's backlash? Why was he able to make use of the twin-headed dragon's army to launch two large-scale attacks? There was only one reason. That misused technology is known as the crystallization of human imagination, the ultimate secret of humanity that can create energy out of nothing, the third perpetual motion machine. The rain of golden swords that had ruthlessly cut through the three-headed dragon's body spun around and turned into a brilliant stream of light. They gathered together and finally turned into a shining long sword. That resplendent golden luster was far more profound than any of the previous golden swords. Noah stared at the three-headed dragon with his pitch-black eyes, as if he was carving the appearance of this demon king into his mind so that he would never forget it. He extended a finger and pointed at the three-headed dragon. Azdakaha. The factor that caused you to become the ultimate destructive factor of humanity's final trial is the third perpetual motion machine, used by those with malicious intentions. That is your essence. The dazzling golden sword suddenly shot out, leaving a faint mark in the air as it flashed across the sky. Before Azdakaha could even react to the intense pain all over his body, a dazzling golden light filled his vision. Poochie! With a tearing sound, the shining golden sword stabbed into the three-headed dragon's abdomen. It pierced through the three-headed dragon's body and came out from its back, leaving behind a trail of red blood. At this moment, the three-headed dragon opened its eyes wide. At this moment, the hundreds of gods in the surrounding god groups were all stunned. At this moment, the Alliance army collectively fell into a state of absolute silence. At this moment, the two-headed dragons that were crazily attacking all froze in place. The entire world suddenly became silent. At the same time, the terrifying spiritual level surging on the three-headed dragon's body began to drop little by little. It fell from 2 digits all the way to the three-headed dragon's original level. Moreover, it continued to drop until it fell to 3 digits, 4 digits, and even 5 digits. As mentioned before, to the demon king Azdakaha, his clones were nothing more than armors. After the armor was peeled off, the weakness of the three-headed dragon's heart would be exposed. Before the armor was peeled off, no matter what kind of attack the three-headed dragon suffered, it would only bleed and spit out the clones. It would not suffer any substantial damage. Therefore, Noah did not use the warrior incarnation at the beginning. Before he peeled off the three-headed dragon's armor, if he used the warrior incarnation, then the warrior incarnation's power might be erased by this attribute. And when the three-headed dragon spat out all of its clones, its armor would be peeled off and the weakness of its heart would be exposed. At that time, Noah's victory would be inevitable. Of course, the sword of spiritual speech that could even cut through godhood did not have any fatal power. It could only cut off the abilities and godhood of the knowledge and temporarily seal the target's power. Therefore, after being cut by the golden sword of absolute evil and the knowledge of the human final trial, all of the three-headed dragon's abilities were sealed. The simulated star map, another cosmology, named Avesta, had completely lost its effectiveness. The godhood of the fire worship sect's evil god was cut off. Even the nature of the human final trial was erased. As a result, the three-headed dragon's terrifying power continued to fall. It lost the support of the simulated star Atlas, another cosmology, lost the power of the evil god, and lost the nature of the human final trial. In the end, it was only left with a monstrous power that surpassed humans. Now, the three-headed dragon did not even have 5 digits. In addition, the mystery of the human final trial had been solved, and it could no longer be resurrected. As long as its heart was pierced, this demon king who had once shaken millions of gods and plunged the entire box court into an abyss of suffering would completely die. Understanding this, Aziz Dakahar's 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes trembled a few times before regaining their calm. Slowly reaching out its ferocious dragon claws, the three-headed dragon grasped the golden sword that had pierced through its abdomen. As if it had seen through life and death, it softly muttered, "Has the time finally come?" As long as it was a demon king, it was destined to be destroyed. Even if it was a true demon king of the human final trial, it was the same. The only difference was whether it was fast or slow. If it was fast, many humans before Azedakaha had been destroyed in the final trial. If it was slow like Azedakaha, if he did not die in this battle, then in the end, he might not be able to complete his mission as a human final trial and be destroyed along with the human apocalypse. The so-called human final trial was such an existence. It materialized the human apocalypse and gave humans a chance to overcome it. As long as they could overcome the human final trial, human history would develop, and the human apocalypse would be avoided. They would then walk toward the future. If they could not be defeated, then in the end they would disappear along with the human apocalypse. In the case of the three-headed dragon, if he was defeated, then the third perpetual motion machine would be abused by someone with malicious power, and the future of the apocalypse would not occur. Therefore, the human final trial was a disaster, but it was also the hope of humanity to overcome the apocalypse. In the teachings of the fire worship sect, the existence of evil was to show the good, to warn the world that they had to abandon evil and promote good, to punish evil and eliminate evil. As the final trial of the human final trial, Azedakaha sincerely hoped that his existence could be like the evil god who existed to show the good, and give humanity a chance to overcome the apocalypse. Now this moment had finally arrived. The moment to be overcome has finally arrived. Azedakaha clenched the golden sword that had pierced through his abdomen and roared loudly in Noah's direction. "Heroes of the human race, overcome me. Before I am overcome, I will never compromise with the humans." As he roared, the three-headed dragon flapped its pitch-black wings, and a shocking aura erupted from its body as it charged toward Noah. The conviction in its heart caused the three-headed dragon to break through its limits. Like a dying flash of light, its spiritual lattice skyrocketed, climbing all the way back to 3 digits. Facing the three-headed dragon that had erupted with shocking power and was charging toward him, Noah was neither happy nor sad. He used the weapon refinement spell to create the most ordinary night sword. Pucci. The long sword pierced through the three-headed dragon's heart. Chapter 1607. Drip. Drip. The tip of the sword that had pierced through the three-headed dragon's back was dripping with dark red blood. It fell to the ground bit by bit, forming a pool of blood that was neither big nor small. In the distant horizon, the three-headed dragon did not seem to feel the pain of having its heart pierced through at all. Its 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes were fixed on Noah, not moving away even a little bit. Noah did not avoid the three-headed dragon's gaze. He also stared at the three-headed dragon's red jade-like eyes. His hand that was holding the sword that had pierced through the three-headed dragon's heart did not tremble at all. It was as if he was not surprised by this result at all. His expression did not change at all. In this instant, whether it was the surrounding gods or the allied army on the ground, they all fell into a daze. They did not recover for a long time. It was as if only Noah and the three-headed dragon were left in this world. It was terrifyingly silent. After an unknown amount of time, the three-headed dragon calmly opened his mouth. "You won." "Yes," Noah replied as if it was a matter of course. "I won." The three-headed dragon was silent for a while before saying this. "You are very powerful." Noah looked up slightly and said sincerely, "Aren't you the same? However, my story ends here." The three-headed dragon's tone had a trace of melancholy and relief. "The next era is yours, hero of mankind." "You are wrong, Demon King." Noah shook his head and said what was in his heart almost subconsciously. The next era should be the domain of the people of this world. It should not belong to an outsider like me. Outsider. The three-headed dragon was stunned at first. Then, as if he had seen through Noah's heart, his 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes shone with an unprecedented light. He was in disbelief and he muttered, "So that's how it is. So that's how it is. Not a hero of mankind, but a protector of the world. So that's how you can easily wipe out the apocalypse of mankind?" In the instant that his life was about to end, the 3-headed demonic dragon actually saw through Noah's true nature. Not the hope of humanity, but the hope of the world, the hope of all worlds. The 3-headed dragon muttered as it stared closely at Noah. A smile suddenly appeared on its ferocious face. "So I was surpassed by such an existence. How glorious." Noah didn't say anything else. He just silently held the knight's sword that pierced through the heart of the 3-headed dragon and slowly closed his eyes. However, at this time, the 3-headed dragon suddenly reached out and grabbed Noah's hand that was holding the sword hilt. "Son of Heaven, the Son of Heaven who brings hope to all the worlds, let me, Demon King Azidakaha, give you my final blessing. I hope that the blessings of good and evil can accompany you forever and contribute to everything in this world." After saying that, a dazzling starlight flickered from the body of the 3-headed dragon. Like flowing water, it flowed along the arm of the 3-headed dragon that was holding onto Noah's sword and into Noah's body. At this moment, Noah clearly felt it. In the depths of his heart, the cosmic sea that was densely covered with nebulas suddenly began to rotate. Within it, more nebulas, brighter and wider, were gradually increasing, causing the cosmic sea to become even more dazzling and boundless. Feeling the changes in the cosmic sea, Noah suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the 3-headed dragon with an extremely astonished gaze. In the face of Noah's astonishment, the 3-headed dragon just closed its 3 pairs of eyes. As if it had completed its mission, it lost all signs of life. Bang! A burst of flames burned from the body of the 3-headed dragon without any reason, burning that pure white ferocious dragon's body bit by bit until there was nothing left. Amidst the flames, the flag of absolute evil that the 3-headed dragon carried on its back like a cloak remained intact. No, it was not in perfect condition. Under the burning of the flames, the pattern on the flag slowly changed. The flag that symbolized absolute evil slowly reverted back to the original flag that was the key to the seal. With the hills as the background, the flag symbolized the freedom of the maiden. That was the banner of no name. Looking at the flag floating in the flames, Noah subconsciously reached out his hand. Only then did the flames covering the flag disappear as if they had succeeded in their mission, allowing the flag to float into Noah's hand. The entire place fell silent. Oh! In the next second, thunderous cheers rang out from the ground like a tsunami. That was the cheers from the Alliance army. The cheers even reached the sky, clearly reaching the ears of Noah and the other gods. Thus, in the final trial of humanity, the oldest demon king with the title of absolute evil, Azidakaha, had been successfully subdued. The faces of the gods of the hundreds of god groups became extremely unsightly, and they all began to panic. Even the final trial of humanity, which has risen to more than double digits, can't do anything to him? Is that really a human? How can a human do such a thing? What should we do now? The voices of the gods and Buddhas from all directions made the ancient wind god more and more agitated, and he could not help but curse loudly. Why are you panicking? Just a human. Even if we can't kill him, he will still turn into a pile of dirt in 100 years. We are immortal gods, and we have all the time to slowly watch a human walk towards death. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice rang out. Is that so? The voice did not carry any emotion, and it sent chills down the spines of the gods' spines. You want to see me die? Noah's gaze swept across all the gods present. I'm afraid you won't have the chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah flipped his hand, and a shining parchment suddenly appeared in his hand. The parchment in Noah's hand turned into starlight and scattered little by little. Soon after, everyone present discovered it. In the sky, pieces of parchment lightly fluttered down like feathers. Gift game name. To the gods of heaven to impose sanctions. Impose sanctions to the gods in the heavens. Participation condition. The target of all adverse actions against the organizer is limited to the gods. Victory Condition 1. Defeat the organizer Noah Dole. Victory Condition 2. Illuminate the power of the gods hidden deep within the human individual. Defeat Condition 1. If the organizer kills the participant, it will be considered a loss. Defeat Condition 2. If the organizer causes a fatal injury to the participant, it will be considered a loss. Game Rule 1. Before the game ends, all evasive actions are prohibited. Game Rule 2. Before the game ends, all healing actions are prohibited. Game Rule 3. Before the game ends, all offensive actions are effective against the organizer. Game Rule 4. Before the game ends, all offensive actions are effective against the participant. Oath. Only under the condition that the target of execution is someone who meets the participation condition, to guarantee the legitimacy of this game. Seal. When the contents of the parchment were imprinted in the eyes of the gods, all of their faces turned pale. All evasive actions are prohibited. All evasive actions are prohibited. The ancient wind god was also holding a piece of parchment in his hand. He stared at the contents of the parchment, his hands trembling. No. No. The words "all evasive actions are prohibited" made all of the gods who were planning to run away when the situation turned bad completely fail. Moreover, it was in a very bad way. Holding the ordinary knight's sword, Noah walked step by step in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. There is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you want to go. You can't blame anyone. In the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the phoenix. Noah's figure turned into a phantom and rushed toward one of the gods. The ordinary knight's sword in his hand was like moonlight, flashing past that god's neck. Poochie! With a tearing sound, a head with wide-open eyes and a large amount of blood flew into the sky. Chapter 1608. Splash! Crimson blood sprinkled down from the sky and dyed Noah's clothes red. The deity whose head had been chopped off stopped in midair for a moment, and then fell toward the ground like a kite with a broken string. A deity had been completely killed by a single strike. All the deities widened their eyes and cried out in shock. How is this possible? He killed a deity in one hit. Impossible. That kind of thing can't happen. The deities couldn't be blamed for losing their composure. This situation was simply too illogical. Disregarding everything else, Noah had encountered many opponents in the past. Most of them had extremely tenacious vitality and immortality. Take Maxwell for example. Although his strength could enter the 4 digits in Noah's eyes, he was just a small character that was barely worth his attention. Yet, such a small character relied on the third perpetual motion machine's immortality to stall Noah for a long time. In the end, Noah could only seal him. The so-called deities were also in this category. Compared to humans, deities had extremely powerful immortality. For example, there were only 3 ways to defeat a deity in a box. 1. Destroy it with force that could shake a planet. 2. Destroy it with the deity's weakness in myths and legends. 3. Destroy it with the same method that deities use. Apart from these 3 methods, there was no other way to destroy a deity. Now Noah had only used an ordinary knight's sword. And he had killed a deity just like that? That was absolutely impossible. Only the ancient wind deity noticed the problem and immediately looked at the contract in his hand. On it, the 4th rule of the game was clearly written. Before the game ends, all attacks are effective against the participants. In other words, no matter what method Noah used, even if it was the most common weapon, it could still cause damage to a deity. What did this mean? It meant that in front of Noah, apart from strength, a deity was no different from a normal person. Piercing the heart would result in death. Chopping off the head would result in death. Cutting the abdomen would result in death. Even if his throat was slit, he would still die. In addition to the 2nd rule of the game, all healing activities were prohibited before the game ended. The life force and immortality of the deities would be completely nullified. Injuries cannot be healed. There was no way to revive after death. This game of bestowment was simply a nightmare for deities. Clang! A ray of light blossomed from Noah's other hand, turning into another knight's sword, which Noah gripped tightly in his hand. With 2 swords in his hands, Noah re-entered the world of Godspeed. His body was like a ghost as he streaked across the void, leaving behind a series of light shadows. Like a mirage, he swept toward the god spirits one after another. Swish! The sharp night sword cut through the air, causing a flash of sword light to appear in the air. Poochie! The sword light flashed past the abdomen of a god who couldn't react at all and cut him in half. Blood splattered everywhere. Poochie! 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 Immediately, mirage-like phantoms flashed through the group of gods one after another. With continuous sword lights, the gods were beheaded and their necks were severed. Crimson blood splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of god spirits were buried by the two ordinary knights' swords. Their corpses fell to the ground along with a large amount of blood. No, no! The bloody massacre caused fear to appear on the faces of all the god spirits in the hundreds of god spirits. Go, go! Don't give him a chance to use another cosmology. Otherwise we'll be finished. Ancient Wind God was also terrified and could only shout loudly. Don't worry. There are also conditions that are beneficial to us. The third rule of the game allows us to use any means of attack. That means we can attack together. As long as he doesn't have a chance to use another cosmology. We can't lose. Ancient Wind God's words finally caused the fear on the god spirits' faces to change into uncertainty and finally become ferocious. Go! Let's go together. Don't give him a chance to use another cosmology. As long as he doesn't use another cosmology, even if he's a 3-digit main god, he won't be able to defeat so many gods. Go! Go! Therefore, the gods all rushed towards Noah with ferocious expressions. Seeing all the gods attacking Noah, Ancient Wind God looked at the contract in his hand again with a gloomy expression. No matter what, if they wanted to escape from Noah's threat, they had to clear the bestowal game that Noah started using his authority as the organizer. If they cleared the game, not only would Noah lose, but the gods might even let Noah become their subordinate. At that time, not only would the sovereignty of all 24 sons fall into the hands of the gods, even Noah, who could use the another cosmology of the illusory star Tai Sui, and even annihilated the humans in the final trial, would become the goon's hired thug. That was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In order to clear Noah's bestowal game, there were two conditions. Victory Condition 1. Defeat the organizer Noah Dole. Victory Condition 2. Reveal the power of God hidden deep within the human body. Reveal the power of God hidden deep within the human body? Ancient Wind God was shocked. Speaking of which, that human did use the sort of words that can slay gods on the three-headed dragon. That's the power of the fire worship sex god of victory, right? I know. Ancient Wind God was overjoyed. That human, Noah Dole, has the power of the fire worship sex god of victory, Welslana. However, the Ancient Wind God's words only caused the contract in his hand to flash before it disappeared. What's wrong? Is the riddle wrong? Ancient Wind God was anxious. Impossible. That's definitely Welslana's golden sword. This proves that the human has the power of the fire worship sex god of victory. There's no mistake. Yes, Noah's power did indeed come from the fire worship sex god of victory, Welslana. However, other than Welslana, Noah had more than one god's power in his body. Don't forget, Noah's authority is an ability formed by the fusion of Welslana, Mercato, Red Dragon Emperor Drake, and his own power. In order to clarify the true form of the divine power hidden in Noah's body, the archaic wind god had to use Mercator's name in addition to Welslana's name. Ancient Wind God, who did not know this, was getting more and more anxious. What is it? While Ancient Wind God was panicking, Noah's bloody massacre continued. The mirage-like shadows kept darting back and forth among the gods. Clang! Sword lights that were as intoxicating as moonlight flashed across the space. Poochie poochie poochie. The sword lights swept across the gods at an astonishing speed, cutting their bodies into halves. Blood splattered everywhere. Ah! For a moment, the entire sky was filled with screams that shook people's hearts. The bloody massacre caused Noah, who was flying back and forth in the sky like a phantom, to be covered in the blood of the gods. His eyes carried a bone-chilling coldness. The two extremely ordinary knight swords in his hands had completely transformed into sharp weapons that could kill gods and Buddhas. Every time he swung his swords, there would be a burst of red blood stains. Seeing the gods who were famous in myths and legends being slaughtered like dogs, the gods' hearts gradually collapsed. They were not allowed to escape. They were not allowed to heal. They were not even allowed to possess vitality and immortality that surpassed that of humans. Despair began to fill the gods' hearts. Chapter 1609. Time passed by mercilessly. The sun began to set, bringing dusk to this world. Under the dusk on a red land, blood dyed this place a chilling color. The air was filled with the smell of blood, which was quite frightening. In the pool of blood that dyed the ground red, mutilated corpses lay there, piled up like a mountain. They were scattered all over the ground like garbage. No one would be willing to believe it, right? The corpses that were piled up like garbage were the corpses of gods and Buddhas that had a place in various myths and legends. At this moment, the corpses of gods and Buddhas were like the corpses of ordinary people. Their wounds were bleeding, and there was no trace of life. They were piled up together without a burial place. Pa! The ancient wind god, who was holding a contract in his hand, knelt heavily on the ground. He supported himself with his hands on the ground, lowered his head, and his lips trembled as if he was out of his wits. Impossible! 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 The bloody massacre lasted from morning to dusk. It moved from the sky to the ground, creating this scene. Over 100 gods of the god groups were killed in this period of time. It was not hundreds of gods but hundreds of gods and groups of gods. For example, all the gods in Greek mythology were counted as a group of gods. All the gods in Norse mythology were counted as a group of gods. Naturally, all the gods in China's mythology were counted as a group of gods. Here, all the gods and Buddhas in hundreds of god groups were killed. There were at least millions of gods and Buddhas, or even tens of millions of gods and Buddhas. After all, there were 8 million gods and Buddhas in Japanese mythology. Even if the groups of gods in other myths and legends were not so exaggerated, there were definitely more than 1 or 200,000 gods and Buddhas. Not to mention there was more than one group of gods here. There were hundreds of them. All the gods in the hundreds of god groups had been killed by 2 ordinary knight swords. Only the ancient wind godly spirit was left alive. Tap, 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 tap. While the ancient wind god was in an indescribable daze, footsteps sounded in front of him. The ancient wind god raised his head in a daze and looked in the direction of the voice. Among the piles of corpses, a figure holding 2 ordinary-looking knight swords walked toward the ancient wind godly spirit with his back to the sun. His clothes had long been dyed red with blood. The tip of the knight sword in his hand was dripping with dark red blood. In the eyes of the ancient wind spirit, that figure was like the god of death, and the god of slaughter was even more terrifying than Azidakaha. As a result, the ancient wind divine spirit, one of the 3 most powerful divine spirits, even his teeth began to chatter. His knees gave out and he couldn't even stand up. Under such circumstances, the ancient wind god roared at Noah like a madman. "You monster! Ah! Monster!" He was indeed a monster. Otherwise, how could a human kill all the gods and Buddhas in hundreds of god groups? Even with the organizer's authority over the gods, the conditions to kill all the gods and Buddhas in the game had been reduced to the same level as ordinary people. Even the most ordinary weapon could cause damage, but the power of the gods and Buddhas had not been lost. Under the encirclement and annihilation of all the gods of over 100 pantheons, even the most powerful of the 3 digits, those main gods and deity kings, would be annihilated alive, wouldn't they? However, Noah had been killing for an entire day, and he wasn't injured at all. He didn't even show any signs of exhaustion. If he had used another cosmology, it would have been excusable. However, Noah did not use another cosmology at all, and as a result, he slaughtered all the gods of hundreds of god groups. Moreover, he killed them in the most direct way possible. If that wasn't a monster, then what was? Unfortunately, the ancient wind god didn't know. 1. Noah couldn't be exhausted, because Noah had the spiritual personality of the 3rd perpetual motion machine. Whether it was his magic power, divine power, physical strength, or even mental strength, they were all infinite. 2. Who said that Noah didn't use another cosmology? Noah just didn't use another cosmology from illusory star Taisui. As early as the game started, Noah used another cosmology, another simulated star map, another cosmology. given by absolute evil. Noah, who was indifferent to the ancient wind divine spirit's roar, raised his pitch-black eyes and continued to walk in the ancient wind divine spirit's direction. He looked directly at the ancient wind divine spirit and spoke indifferently. "Is that all your last words?" The ancient wind god's heart skipped a beat. He gritted his teeth and his face turned pale. Finally, the ancient wind god squeezed out these words. Let me go." Noah's lips curled into a mocking smile when he heard that. He continued to walk towards the ancient wind god without any change in his attitude. His slow footsteps seemed to be stepping into the depths of the ancient wind god's heart, causing the ancient wind god to feel fear. "Human." The ancient wind god had no choice but to yell, "Are you really going to kill all of us?" The mocking expression on Noah's face became more and more pronounced. He didn't say anything else and continued to walk toward the ancient wind god. In the blink of an eye, Noah was already in front of the ancient wind god. He looked down at the ancient wind god with a cold expression. "You reap what you sow." The ancient wind god finally understood what was going on. This time Noah was really going to kill all of them. The ancient wind god felt despair and could only laugh bitterly. "Can you bear the sin of slaughtering over 100 god groups?" "Sin," Noah said sarcastically. "If it's not a sin to abandon the entire heavenly court and let the people of the lower realm die on their own, but it's a sin to kill gods like you who only know how to take advantage of others' misfortune. I'm willing to be a sinner." Noah made a merciless declaration. "Repent when you're in hell." The ancient wind god was shocked. He raised his head and roared with his eyes wide open. "Die! Ah!" Amidst the hysterical roar, the ancient wind god's entire body swelled with an astonishing amount of spirit. Abruptly, the ancient wind god leaped up and pounced towards Noah. No matter what, the ancient wind god was a 3-digit existence, and he was the strongest of them all. In terms of strength, even if he wasn't as strong as Audiobook, he was still much stronger than the other postnatal gods. With Noah's strength, he couldn't guarantee that he could defeat the ancient wind god without using 3 incarnations at the same time. However, Noah just looked calmly at the ancient wind god who was charging toward him with an astonishing momentum. He opened his mouth slightly. "Activate Avesta." Counteract each other in turn. Simulate star map. Another cosmology. A burst of starlight bloomed on Noah's body. At this moment, all the power of the ancient wind god's spiritual lattice, physical strength, and gifts were superimposed on Noah, which made Noah's aura soar. Then, Noah activated the incarnation of Phoenix and swung his sword at the ancient wind god at lightning speed. Clang! With the help of Phoenix's lightning speed and simulate star map, another cosmology, the sword, which was more powerful than the 3-digit number in the heavenly court, cut through the space. The sword light flashed through the space and slashed the ancient wind god's neck. Poochie! Crimson blood splattered into the air with a clear tearing sound. In the end, Noah was the only one who survived. In the middle of the mountain of corpses of gods and Buddhas from hundreds of god groups, the scene of him holding 2 swords and his back facing the setting sun made everyone from the Alliance army, including White Yuxia, Sarah, Shadora, Fei Si, Jiao Lu, Jialing, and Non Mei, who had rushed to the scene, all of them were dumbfounded. They couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Chapter 16:10. That night, everyone in the Alliance army returned to Vampire's castle and held a grand celebration banquet. The celebration banquet was organized by the communities of the East, South, and North districts, which were the Thousand Eyes, Dragonhorn Griffin Lion, and Salamandra. All expenses would be accounted for by the 3 communities. The other communities only needed to enjoy themselves and did not need to bear any burden. Because of this, from the evening onwards, every street in the vampire castle was filled with banquets, and the place was filled with laughter and laughter. It was only at this moment that everyone forgot which community they belonged to. They gathered together, laughing and chatting loudly as they enjoyed the delicious food. The demon king that threatened Boxting had been defeated. Of the oldest demon king in the humans' final trial, Audiobook was the last one. In other words, now that the humans had all been annihilated in the final trial, there would no longer be any large-scale threats in Boxting. Holding a celebration banquet for this was a matter of course. What's more, Noah had fought the 3-headed dragon alone. This time there were almost no casualties in the Alliance army. Even if it was for this result, everyone should have a good celebration. And at the celebration banquet, it was inevitable that there would be some topics to talk about. It went without saying that Noah, the biggest contributor, had become the most frequently mentioned existence in everyone's mouth. He had once sealed millions of gods and held sovereignty over all 24 suns. Even White Wuxia, Halloween Queen, and the great sage, Heaven's Equal, recognized this man. Now he had single-handedly annihilated the great demon king that threatened the entire Box Ting. Achievements after achievements, legends after legends, made Noah a godlike existence in everyone's hearts. Everyone who mentioned Noah had an expression and tone full of worship and longing. It was believed that if Noah died now with this worship and longing, he would be able to become a heroic spirit, or even gain faith and become a god, right? Now the name Noah Doria was so famous. Of course, the story of how Noah had slaughtered over 100 gods was even more interesting. The scene of him standing in the middle of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood with his back facing the setting sun and holding a sword with both hands was really shocking. None of the communities that joined the Alliance army belonged to the upper class of gods. In addition, the gods of the upper echelons had openly surrounded the castle of vampires and brazenly seized the sovereignty of the sun. They had also disregarded the safety of the residents of the lower world and helped the three-headed demonic dragon in order to frame Noah. This had long incited public anger. Therefore, when the matter of Noah slaughtering all the deities in the group of over 100 deities was mentioned, there was only delight in everyone's hearts. There was no grudge at all. The gods of the upper echelons probably felt that since they were ready to abandon the people of the lower realm, it didn't matter whether their reputation was good or bad, right? However, Noah had annihilated the humans in the final trial and gained the sovereignty of all 24 suns. This had completely shattered the gods of the upper echelons' decision to rebuild the lower world, so the gods of the upper echelons could only stay here. In this way, the actions of the gods would completely tarnish their reputation. If they didn't properly clean up the mess, it might affect the belief of the residents of the lower realm in the gods. At that time, the gods of the upper echelons would really be troublesome. Presumably, in the following days, the gods of the upper echelons of the lower world would be very busy. However, that had nothing to do with Noah in the slightest. Now this greatest hero was in the main hall of the throne hall, being toasted by everyone. Cheers! Under such a neat and orderly sound, everyone present surrounded the round table that was filled with all kinds of fine wine and delicacies, drinking with a cheerful expression. The people present were the rulers of the East, South, and North districts, as well as the strongest helpers, the great sage of the ocean cover, the great sage of the chaotic heavens, and the Queen's Knight. The rest were the people of no name. Everyone was holding a wine glass in their hands, except for the 11-year-old Ren and Sandora, who were not allowed to drink. They could only hold drinks in their hands and toasted each other in a burst of laughter. While enjoying the fine wine and delicacies, everyone started various topics about the greatest hero of the battle. I didn't know that Mr. Noah had actually obtained the authority of the organizer. Black Rabbit helped Noah pour wine and asked somewhat excitedly, "The authority of the organizer for the deities, when did Mr. Noah obtain this authority?" Just after using the another cosmology of the illusory star Tai Sui to seal the millions of deities. Noah didn't hide anything and directly answered. After that, the central government of the Boxers recognized my contribution and granted me the authority of the organizer for the deities. I see, so there's no name of any community in the sender's part. 16 Knights raised his eyebrows at Noah. However, you dared to use the authority of the organizer to slaughter all the deities of hundreds of deities, little brother. That's right, Feinyao said in a serious tone. Now the deities of the upper echelons of the Boxers shouldn't dare to provoke Noah anymore, right? But is this okay? Yao tilted his head. Won't Noah attract public anger from the deities by doing this? You think too much, little girl. Flood Dragon Lu laughed. Those deities made a bad move. In order to eliminate little brother Noah, they didn't hesitate to disrupt the Demon King's annihilation battle and help the humans in the final trial. This kind of behavior has attracted public anger from the entire Boxers. If the deities of the upper echelons have any brains, they should distance themselves from these slaughtered idiots as soon as possible. Otherwise, even their faith might be affected. So, the deities of the heavenly realm won't dare to cause trouble for little brother Noah, Jialing said sarcastically. Those guys' faces are like that. Don't be happy too early. White Yaksha shook his head and said very seriously. Although the deities of the heavenly realm won't dare to cause trouble for this kid, slaughtering deities isn't a small matter. In people's hearts, deities have always been on the side of good. This kid slaughtered hundreds of deities and was demoted to a demon king. It's not impossible. Everyone fell silent, especially Flood Dragon Lu and Jialing, who had a deep expression. Flood Dragon Lu and Jialing were considered demon kings because they had once been enemies with the deities of the heavenly realm. Noah slaughtered hundreds of deities. Even if he didn't do anything wrong, he probably wouldn't be able to escape the title of demon king. In this regard, Noah just calmly drank his wine and said this disapprovingly. There's nothing to worry about. Just like the so-called deities, there are those like Sakura and Sun Wukong who truly care about the people of the lower realm. There are also those like idiots. Who says that a demon king must be a disaster? Noah took out a shining parchment from his chest. Even if others call me the demon king, I can show everyone my authority as the organizer and tell them that I didn't abuse it. That's why my contract document isn't an ominous black. I haven't done anything wrong to anyone. Well said. Flood Dragon Lu praised loudly and raised his wine cup. For little brother Noah saying that your actions aren't wrong to anyone. I, Flood Dragon Lu, will toast you. You're right. Jialing also revealed a beautiful smile. Even if you're a demon king, we aren't wrong to anyone. We should drink this cup. Hearing this, White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest had a bitter expression that they couldn't say anything about. Unlike Noah, Flood Dragon Lu, and Jialing, White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest were existences that had truly fallen to become demon kings. They weren't demon kings appointed by the deities. Noah, Flood Dragon Lu, and Jialing's words were simply like sprinkling salt in the hearts of White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest. Noah, who clearly saw the expressions of White Yaksha and the others, only then did he react and laugh embarrassedly. Sorry, I forgot about you guys. Everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud at his words. The banquet continued in a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. Chapter 16:11. In the end, the celebration banquet lasted until late at night. After the members of the community drank to their heart's content, the celebration banquet was announced to be over. Noah and the others also drank a lot. In the end, even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, and even Letitia and Pest collapsed. It took a lot of effort for Noah, 16 Nights, and Ren to send all the girls back to their rooms. As for Sarah, Flood Dragon, Jialing, and the others, they also drank until they were dead drunk. Thus, in the end, only Noah, White Yaksha, and 16th Night, who had good alcohol tolerance, as well as Ran and Sandora, who were not allowed to drink. Noah himself did not expect that he, who did not drink often, would have a good alcohol tolerance. Bayasha had a good tolerance for alcohol because he had been nurtured for many years. As for 16 Nights, this guy also stood out in an unexpected field. He was really an existence that violated the rules. However, fortunately, these guys were not drunk so they could clean up the mess. Otherwise, everyone would have to lie on the ground and sleep for the whole night and even until tomorrow. After sending everyone back to their respective rooms to rest, Ren and Sandora also returned to their own rooms to rest, looking exhausted. The remaining three, Noah, 16th Night, and White Yaksha, were still sitting around the messy round table, chatting with each other. The third perpetual motion machine? 16 Nights shook the wine glass in his hand and curled his lips. I thought the essence of the absolute evil spirit level should be a weapon of mass destruction that can destroy 1/3 of the planet's environment. Considering Azedakaha's inheritance, it should be said that it is normal to think of this. Noah shrugged. However, that level can't be considered the end of humanity, right? After all, humans are also a very tenacious creature, White Yaksha said with a sigh. Times are changing and history is constantly changing. But no matter what, it is not easy for humans to survive. As the oldest person who had existed since the appearance of the universe, White Yaksha's words were more convincing than anyone else's. Also, unlike God spirits who can symbolize eternity, humans change all the time. Sometimes it's a good change and sometimes it's a bad change. Even God spirits can't predict what the future of humans will be like. White Yaksha looked at Noah and 16 Nights with deep meaning. Therefore, in the constant changes, the fragile humans in the eyes of others would occasionally produce some shocking characters. The two of you can be considered the best among them, right? If it's just outstanding talent, then I'll reluctantly accept it. 16th Knights looked at Noah with a faint smile. But compared to you, I can only be considered normal. Is it normal? Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. If you're considered normal, then I should really appreciate the level of humans. After all, 16th Knight's ability to break the rules was not normal. Although Noah could torture 16th Knights to death in minutes, if it was purely a competition of physical strength, 16th Knights was undoubtedly breaking the rules. Noah relied on ability points to increase his physical strength to the point where he could match 16th Knights. As for 16th Knights, not only did he reach a level that humans could not reach, he could even shatter a gift. If it wasn't for his lack of skill, it would be difficult to find an opponent that 16th Knights could not match among the 4-digit numbers. Under such circumstances, if 16th Knights was considered normal, then humans would really cry to death. Seriously, there are actually 2 humans like you and no name at the bottom of the 7-digit numbers. I really want to ask someone if this is a joke. White Wuxia shook his head with a smile. Then his expression turned serious. But now that your community's flag has been recovered, and there are so many members with high-level abilities within your ranks, isn't it time to consider the matter of upgrading? Upgrading? Noah and 16th Knights were stunned at first, then they revealed interested expressions. What's wrong? 16th Knights teased. Is the ruler of the East District prepared to recommend us to a 6-digit number? To be more precise, if I only let no name rise to a 6-digit number, I would be underestimating you. White Wuxia suddenly smiled. So, I'm prepared to recommend you to a 5-digit number. This time, Noah and 16th Knights were really shocked. 5-digit number? Noah said in extreme surprise. White Wuxia, that shouldn't be a level that the current no name can rise to, right? Although I'm very unwilling, I have the same idea, 16th Knight said slowly. After all, a 5-digit number and a 6-digit number, one is the middle level while the other is the lower level. The difficulty of upgrading is completely different. In the box, the community's ranking could not be upgraded just because they had several powerful individual members. Other than the lowest 7-digit number, every other level had its own requirements for upgrading. For example, in order to upgrade to a 6-digit number, one had to solve the test proposed by the ruler of the level. Another example was that in order to upgrade to a 5-digit number, more than 3 6-digit numbers had to be included in the sphere of influence. Flags had to be hung on these outer doors, and more than 100 community members had to participate in the bestowment game. From this, it could be seen the difference between a 5-digit number and a 6-digit number. If it was only a 6-digit number, as long as the community had members with sufficient ability, upgrading would not be a problem at all. But if it was a 5-digit number, not only did the community require a certain amount of power, but it also needed to guarantee the strength of the host. No matter what, although a 5-digit number was only the middle level, there were still god-level existences. If the community's power and strength could not be guaranteed, how could it be on the same level as god-level existences? Unfortunately, no name had no way to guarantee this. Even if it had members with high-level abilities in terms of power, no name was inferior to many 7-digit communities, not to mention that it did not have the resources and conditions to be the host and host the bestowment game. Therefore, White Wuxia's proposal had to be questioned by Noah and 16 Knights. In the face of Noah and 16 Knights' doubts, White Wuxia only raised the fan in his hand and covered the lower half of his face. His pair of eyes stared closely at Noah as he said this. But if there is a ruler of the level and no name, then it will be completely different, right? Ruler of the level? 16 Knights was stunned. Ruler of the level? Noah was also stunned, but then he reacted. White Wuxia, do you want to? That's right, kid. White Wuxia closed the fan in his hand with a snap and pointed the tip of the fan at Noah. I want you to replace me and become the new ruler of the East District. White Wuxia's words caused Noah's brows to furrow tightly. I see. 16 Knights was relieved, and his tone became somewhat ethereal. Are you ready to leave? White Wuxia. There's no other way. After returning the godhood and retrieving the power of my peak, I can't stay in the lower realm, White Wuxia sighed. Because of the incident with Azdakaha, I've been stuck here until now. Now that the humans have been suppressed in the final trial, it won't be long before I have to return to the upper echelons of more than 3 digits. Under such circumstances, you have to choose a qualified successor, right? 16 knights laughed unrestrainedly. And in the East District, there's no one more suitable than you to become the ruler of the level. Yes. White Yuksha looked at Noah with a serious expression. Now, your reputation is like the sun in the sky. Not only do you have sovereignty over all 24 suns, even the millions of gods in the heaven realm can't do anything to you. This is something that the entire box court already knows. No one will object to you inheriting my position. Noah immediately fell silent. Chapter 16:12. That was true. With Noah's current reputation and strength, if he inherited White Yuksha's position and became the ruler of the hierarchy, not only would the people in the East District not object, but they would also raise both hands in approval. The ruler of the hierarchy was the guardian of order. Although they had some rights, the main purpose of the ruler of the hierarchy was to maintain order and protect the safety of the residents of the box court. If they were faced with a disaster that endangered the box court, the ruler of the hierarchy would have to step forward bravely. Under such circumstances, Noah's position as the leader of the succession hierarchy would definitely be welcomed. After all, no one would want to be protected by someone who was too weak. As for Noah, not only was his reputation at its peak, but he was also a great hero who had suppressed 3 digits of humans in the final trial. He was an existence who could seal 1,000,000 gods and slaughter hundreds of gods. With such a person protecting them, why would the East District worry about not being safe? Therefore, no one would object to Noah inheriting the position of ruler of the East District. As for those who deliberately caused trouble, which brainless person would find fault with someone who had slaughtered hundreds of gods? Moreover, as the predecessor, I only held more than half of the 14 sons, but you held all 24 sons. This fact will give others the feeling that you are better than me. There will definitely be no problem for you to inherit my position. As he said this, Bayasha smiled helplessly. Not to mention that you are better than me. That's not a feeling, but a fact. Regardless of the sovereignty of all 24 sons, Noah is a person who even holds the another cosmology, which is more than 3 digits above the Hakoni. Moreover, there was more than one another cosmology. You have the another cosmology that you inherited from the Starseed Dragon King and the 3-headed demonic dragon. Even if I were to face those 2 another cosmology, I wouldn't have any chance of winning. White Yuksha openly admitted. Just based on this point, you can proudly sit in the position of the ruler of the East District. The virtual star Taisue's simulated star map, another cosmology, could unconditionally seal the strongest kind of gods and star spirits. To the White Yuksha, who was the sun star spirit, this another cosmology was like a natural enemy that he could not compete with. Avesta's another cosmology could imitate the cosmology of humans and fire worship sect. It could obtain all the abilities of the individual with the cosmology, and it could also turn it into a mirror to counteract the power of the cosmology. Against this another cosmology, White Yuksha was just nourishment. While it made the enemy stronger than him, it also made his power completely ineffective. He had no chance of winning at all. With these 2 another cosmology, Noah really couldn't find an opponent in the box. Other than humans and fire worship sect's gods, it was impossible for anyone to defeat Noah. Even when facing the fire worship sect's gods, Noah could use another cosmology to weaken the other party's spiritual lattice, or even seal it directly. In addition, Noah's power was comparable to that of a Lord God. Which human or god whose spiritual lattice was halved could defeat him? Not to mention, if Noah went all out and disregarded the burden on his body, he could even use the power of 4 incarnations at the same time for a certain period of time to reach a 2-digit level. In this way, who could be Noah's opponent? White Yuksha could not. Halloween Queen could not either. Except for the illusory 1-digit number that even its existence could not be confirmed, Noah already had the ability to truly dominate in the box court. As a ruler of the hierarchy, there was no more suitable existence than Noah. If Noah became the ruler of the hierarchy, then there was no reason for the community of the ruler of the hierarchy to only stay in the 6-digit number, right? At that time, no name where Noah was would be allowed to be promoted to a 5-digit number. It was not impossible to succeed. This is indeed an opportunity. 16th Knight spread his hands and said to Noah very casually, "Little brother, I think you can consider it. Please." White Yuksha made a very sincere request. Sarah in the Southern District has just become the leader of the upper echelons, so there are many things that she can't do at the same time. Sandra in the Northern District is still too young and immature. Also, they are only in the 5 digits. It's fine for them to face some small disasters, but it's too dangerous for them to face a big disaster like this, or a situation like last time where several districts were attacked at the same time. In view of this, among the rulers of the hierarchy, there must be someone who can pick up the big picture at a critical time and has powerful abilities, White Yuksha said to Noah solemnly. Although there are still some candidates for such a person, among them, the most suitable is undoubtedly you. If you inherit my position, then I can really rest assured. Noah understood what White Yuksha meant. In fact, White Yuksha did not know that the Avesta that Noah inherited from Ezidakaha was more or less different from what she knew. To be precise, it should be said that because the person using it was different, the target of this Avesta was a little different. If Ezidakaha were to use Avesta, he could imitate all universes except for the human and Zoroastrianism universes. However, if Noah used Avesta other than humans, he could even imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. The reason was because Avesta, another cosmology, was special. This simulated star map, another cosmology, contained the fire worship sect's dualism of good and evil. As the evil god of the fire worship sect, when Ezidakaha used Avesta, it would be classified as the evil god of good and evil. Therefore, he would use it. In the fire worship sect's teachings, evil existed to show the existence of good. Naturally, as an evil god who was suppressed by good, when Ezidakaha was positioned as evil, he was destined to be unable to imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. However, Noah was different. When Noah used Avesta, he was positioned as the good side. The good camp suppressing the evil camp was a very important part of the fire worship sect's mythology. For example, Welslana was an evil god who had suppressed countless evil camps. He was an undefeated military god. Therefore, when Noah was positioned as the good side when he used Avesta, he could imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. In other words, only the human cosmology was not within the scope of this another cosmology. Without relying on illusory star Taisui, Noah was almost invincible just by relying on Avesta. There was no reason why Noah could not be the leader of the hierarchy. However, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. This was because Noah could not stay in this world forever. Now that Ezidakaha had been suppressed, Noah was ready to leave this world. Noah felt that there were some things that he should verify. Therefore, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. You don't have to make a decision immediately. White Yuksha seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and changed the topic. Think about it carefully before giving me a reply. Noah could only nod. Chapter 16:13. Successor to the ruler of the Stratum? The next day, in the Hall of No Name's base, Noah took advantage of the time when everyone was eating breakfast to tell everyone about this matter. Immediately, everyone present cried out in surprise. Wah! Wah 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 wah. Black Rabbit immediately panicked. It seems like something incredible has happened. That's right. Ren was also a little flustered. Moreover, the community will be recommended to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Isn't this a little too sudden? Or rather, is this really okay? Flying Bird was not as panicked as Black Rabbit and Ran, and asked doubtfully. Although we have already found the flag, our community is still a no name without a name. Let's not talk about whether or not the promotion to a 5-digit number will work. Let's talk about the ruler of the stratum. Is that something that a member of no name can succeed? I don't think there's any problem, Letitia said. Now, almost everyone in the box knows about Master's ability. Even if he belongs to a member of no name, no one will object, right? And if it's promoted to a 5-digit number, then it's even less of a problem. Pest continued Letitia's words. Let's not talk about the appearance of a successor to the stratum ruler in the community. Just based on the performance of no name in this battle, there's no doubt that they should get first place. As a reward, it's not impossible for them to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Right now, I'm more concerned about whether or not No Name can get back their 5-digit and 6-digit number assets. 16th Night knocked on the table. Before they were reduced to No Name, this community was the largest power in the East District. Naturally, they had their own sphere of influence in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers. If we can get back those assets, then we can shout long live 3 times. Wasn't the property taken away by the Demon King Alliance? Yao asked curiously. Can they be taken back? There are still some things that can't be taken away. Ren finally calmed down a little and replied. For example, the land. The land that No Name held in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers should still be there. Land. Flying Bird slightly raised her eyebrows. Don't tell me that it's been abandoned like the land in our base? Our community's 5-digit and 6-digit lands are basically some mineral veins and oil fields, Black Rabbit explained to Flying Bird. Mineral veins and oil fields are not as easily abandoned as farmlands and pastures, so those lands should still be intact. That's good. If that's the case, we won't have no confidence when we reach 5 digits. 16th Night laughed. If those mineral veins and oil fields are worth mining, the wealth of our community should instantly increase by a lot. It's not impossible for us to become the host of this event. Now that the flag has been reclaimed, our community's reputation has been raised to the peak because of Master's existence. If we take advantage of this time to develop, we should be able to make the community a true 5-digit number in about a year. Letitia smiled sweetly. Restoring the past glory of the community is no longer a dream, everyone. Letitia's words made a smile appear on the faces of everyone present. Their mood more or less became a little high. Wait a minute. You've misunderstood the main point. Noah hurriedly shouted for them to stop. Although your ideas can't be said to be wrong, they are all built on the condition that I become the Stratum ruler. If I can't become the Stratum ruler, then No Name naturally won't be able to reach 5 digits. All of these guesses will be nothing, right? Everyone was slightly startled and looked at each other. In other words, Pest asked with uncertainty. You don't want to become the Stratum ruler? Everyone present cast their gazes on Noah. Their eyes filled with hope, expectation, and unease. There was no helping it. Noah's decision would determine whether or not No Name could regain its past glory and become the largest faction in the East District once again. Thus, let alone Black Rabbit, Letitia, Ran, and the other old members, even 16th Night, Flying Bird, and Yao hoped that Noah could become the Stratum ruler. Under the gazes of the crowd that were full of hope, expectation, and uneasiness, Noah's expression suddenly became awkward. Seeing this, everyone understood Noah's decision. Why? Yao asked in a confused manner. Isn't it very cool to become the Stratum ruler? Whether or not it's cool is secondary, Noah said in a somewhat speechless manner. The problem is, even if I become the Stratum ruler, I won't have the time to complete my duties as the Stratum ruler. No time. Everyone was immediately confused. Seeing this, Noah hesitated for a moment before saying, I have my own matters to deal with as well. I also have my own things to deal with. Maybe after a while I will leave boxing, right? Leave the box court? Everyone was surprised. Master, you plan to leave the box court? Letitia frowned. Why? Pest did not say anything. Instead, she stared closely at Noah, a trace of anxiety appearing in her eyes. Clearly seeing the anxiety in Pest's eyes, Noah seemed to have read Pest's thoughts. He extended his hand and patted Pest's head. Rest assured, I will only leave after I'm done with your matters. Only then did the anxiety in Pest's eyes disappear. However, it was soon replaced by confusion. Evidently, Pest also did not understand why Noah wanted to leave the box court. I also have my own reasons, Noah laughed bitterly. Well, if nothing unexpected happens, we will be able to meet in a month's time, right? Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Since it's only a month's time, there shouldn't be any major problems, right? Letitia looked at Noah with her deep red eyes. If that's the case, why don't you become the Stratum ruler? Even if it's only a month's time, it will still become a problem, no? Noah spoke helplessly. Could it be that you all think that it won't become a problem if the Stratum ruler is not in power for a month? That was true. Ignoring everything else, if the Demon King were to suddenly attack during this 1 month's time, If the Stratum ruler was not in power, how would they face the Demon King? Could it be that they were to allow the Demon King to wreak havoc and wait until a month's time to deal with it? At that time, who knew how much damage would be done to the Eastern District? Moreover, the Stratum ruler's job was far from just fighting against the Demon King. For example, some illegal activities and organizations that were harmful to the order of the Eastern District needed to be banned. Additionally, the setting of the usage fees for every outer sect gate, the approval of the Eastern District's community's promotion application, the creation of the promotion trial, the decision of the Game of Grace held periodically by the Eastern District and so on, all of these tasks required the Stratum ruler to complete. Once the Stratum ruler was no longer in power, who knew how chaotic the entire district would become? Noah did not want to become an irresponsible person. Thus, if he wanted to become the Stratum ruler, he must consider the issue of fulfilling his duties. At the very least, if he could not solve this problem during the 1 month's time, Noah would not agree to become the Stratum ruler. So that's how it is, Letitia nodded and suddenly said. If that's the case, Master can be at ease. With me here, let alone 1 month's time, no matter how long it takes, it won't be a problem. What? Noah was stunned. Master, did you forget? Letitia looked at Noah reproachfully, raised her head and puffed out her chest, one hand pressed against her chest, and said proudly, even if I'm only a little maid under Master's command now, in the past, I was once a Stratum ruler with full power. It's just a Stratum ruler's job, let me carry it out, it's not a difficult thing. Letitia's words woke him up from his dream. That's right, that's right. Black Rabbit happily clapped his hands. No matter what, Master Letitia is the owner of a 4-digit divine spark, and also the owner of the Son of Ophiuchus constellation. Carrying out the Stratum ruler's job is not a problem at all. That's right, Letitia smiled and said to Noah. So Master, you can rest assured and do your own things. The Stratum ruler's job, let me carry it out on your behalf. Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself. After a while, Noah finally made his decision. You agreed? In one of the rooms in the throne hall, White Yuksha looked at Noah with surprise. Yesterday night, when he saw Noah hesitating and being in a difficult position, White Yuksha thought that Noah would not agree to this matter. Now that the situation had taken a turn, with Noah taking over the Stratum ruler's position, the safety of the lower realm could basically rest easy. That's great. White Yuksha happily stood up. Since that's the case, there's no time to lose. I'll announce this matter now. Before that, I might leave for a period of time. In the period that I'm not around, my job will be temporarily taken over by Letitia, Noah said directly. As for the Stratum ruler's appointment, wait until I help Pest to fulfill her wish. Pest's wish. White Yuksha's face suddenly froze. Immediately, after being silent for a while, he looked at Noah with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Can you tell me about this matter? Chapter 16:14. Originally, Noah had only casually mentioned Pest's matter. However, seeing White Yuksha's unprecedentedly serious expression, Noah immediately sensed that something was amiss. Then Noah's heart skipped a beat. Thinking about it carefully, Pest had also said that the reason why the Black Death was prevalent was because someone had used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's periodic activity. As an existence who held more than half of the sun's sovereignty in the past, it was impossible for White Yuksha to not know the inside story, right? Thus, Noah looked at White Yuksha with a thoughtful look in his eyes. White Yuksha, do you know something? White Yuksha immediately fell silent. Noah wasn't in a hurry as he quietly waited for White Yuksha's reaction. Not long after, White Yuksha suddenly spoke. If you're referring to something related to the Demon King of the Black Death, then I do know something that has a lot to do with it. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Looking at Noah, White Yuksha said, do you know what's wrong? Do you know about dystopia? Dystopia. Noah was stunned. Utopia. It referred to the concept of utopia, which was considered the most beautiful society in human thought. In this concept, it was generally believed that all citizens should obtain an equal income, build a residence without differences, and turn everything into an equal existence, living every day without distinction between good and bad. In such a society, brilliant gems should have the same value as dull stones, and resources should be equalized. The term price didn't exist, and one could get as many resources as they wanted. Therefore, there was no struggle between people there, and they lived an absolutely equal life. Dystopia, on the other hand, was the opposite of an ideal world like utopia. It meant that utopia was actually a place filled with ugliness and misfortune. That was because in such a place, the so-called rarity didn't exist, and it wouldn't nurture independence. Living in such a society, although there was no struggle, discrimination, or epidemic, living the same life every day, every month, every second was the greatest torture and even misfortune. Therefore, in this kind of society, although it was peaceful on the surface, it was filled with all kinds of uncontrollable evils. In this society where material civilization was rampant and higher than spiritual civilization, the human spirit was extremely dependent on material. The human spirit did not have true freedom in a highly developed technological society. However, that was to be expected. If everything became equal in terms of resources, then people would no longer need to work tirelessly for the sake of resources. That sounded good, but it was only a superficial increase in the standard of living of humans. After all, not needing to run around and be tired meant that humans would lose the meaning of working hard. Every day they would be like walking corpses without any meaning. Therefore, utopia would lead to the loss of human freedom, the spread of material waste, the decline of morality, the oppression of democracy, the rampant class system, the rampant suicidal atmosphere, and so on. In the end, it would lead humans to destruction. This was the idea of a dystopian society. Noah still possessed this level of knowledge. However, Noah was still stunned. This was because Noah did not know why White Yuksha would suddenly mention dystopia here. What? You didn't realize? White Yuksha smiled bitterly. Dystopia is an idea that will lead humans to destruction. As the factor that will lead to the end of humanity, it should be enough, right? His words jolted Noah's spirit. The factor that will lead to the end of humanity? Wasn't that? That's right, it's the final trial of humanity. White Yuksha's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. In the past, there was a final trial of humanity created by the personification of dystopian ideas in the box court. It was called the Demon King of the Closed World. Noah had also heard of this matter, but he had not realized it before. No matter what, Noah did not expect that the topic of pests would be related to the final trial of humanity. Frowning, Noah said with some uncertainty, "I remember. It was the final trial of humanity that turned the entire West District of the Box Court into a dystopian world. The people and livestock born and raised in the West District would slowly lose their lives over time. In the end, they would even become non-existent. Even the faith of the gods would be weakened and the existence of the gods would be completely wiped out, right?" "Yes." White Yuksha nodded. Therefore, in terms of the nature of the Godslayer, the Demon King of the dystopian world is even worse than Azidakaha. It was because of the influence of dystopia that the West District did not participate in the battle against Azidakaha. The West District's class rulers also did not appear. But that Demon King seems to have been defeated, right? Noah asked. "Why are you mentioning him here?" Yes, the Demon King of the dystopian world had been defeated. Moreover, it was defeated by the great alliance of class rulers formed by the community Noah was in before it was reduced to no name. Why would White Yuksha suddenly mention the Demon King of the dystopian world? White Yuksha seemed to know Noah's question and couldn't help but sigh. "Then, do you know how the Demon King of the dystopian world was defeated?" As for this, Noah didn't know anything. Although he found records about the Demon King of the dystopian world in the library of no name, there was no detailed description of how the Demon King was defeated. Rather, even the matter of the Demon King of the dystopian world being defeated by the great alliance of class rulers led by the predecessor of no name was not recorded in the books in the library. Noah learned about it from Letitia. Now White Yuksha brought up this issue. Noah suddenly had a bad feeling. Under such circumstances, White Yuksha began to explain. "You should also know that in human history, originally, the liberation of serfs was delayed until the early 1900s. As a result, it hindered the development of enlightenment and liberalism, right?" Noah nodded with a heavy heart. Seeing Noah like this, White Yuksha sighed again. "But you don't know that in the trajectory of human history, if enlightenment and liberalism are hindered, it will become the reason for the growth of dystopian ideas." Hearing this, Noah knew what had happened. The ominous premonition in his heart had come true. The Demon King's closed world is the personification of dystopian ideas. Therefore, the appearance of dystopian ideas is the reason for the birth of this human's final trial, White Yuksha said as if he couldn't bear it. In order to defeat this demon king in the past, led by the great alliance of class rulers who resisted the demon king's dystopia, the people who challenged the closed world used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's activity. This allowed the Black Death to spread from the 14th century and lasted for more than 100 years. In the end, it allowed the social status of serfs to rise ahead of time, promoting the development of enlightenment and liberalism, preventing the appearance of dystopian ideas, thus interrupting the connection to the future of the closed world, and making the demon king of the dystopian world disappear. In other words, the Black Death's pandemic was promoted in order to defeat the demon king's closed world. And the people who promoted this matter were part of the great alliance of class rulers led by No Name's predecessor. The target of Pest's revenge was not the sun. Instead, it was everyone in the great alliance of class rulers in the past, including No Name. Do you understand why I'm so concerned about Pest's wish? White Yuksha looked straight at Noah. Although this is only my conjecture, if the wish of that little girl, who is responsible for the deaths of 80 million people, is to prevent the Black Death from occurring, then human history will return to the path of promoting dystopian ideologies. At that time, the history of the Black Death will be erased, and the Demon King's closed world will be revived. The entire closed world will once again face the threat of the human's final trial. White Yuksha said extremely solemnly. Kid, you have to think carefully before you act. Noah's expression finally sank. Chapter 16:15. Pest, who did not know what Noah and White Yuksha were talking about, was currently together with the members of No Name. They were gathered in the main hall, discussing the matter of the ruler of the hierarchy. To be more precise, No Name and the others were excitedly chatting about how Noah would soon become the ruler of the upper class. Pest was merely looking at this scene with a bored expression. Actually, Pest herself was surprised by Noah becoming the ruler of the upper echelons. Yet she also felt that it was only natural. She was surprised because she did not expect that as an original demon king, there would be a day when she would become the ruler of the hierarchy. Naturally, it was like what White Yuksha and 16th Night said before. After White Yuksha abdicated, there was no one more suitable than Noah to become the ruler of the hierarchy in the entire East District. No matter what, the current Noah already possessed the ability to become the overlord of the entire box court. In terms of combat strength, Noah was already in existence on par with White Yuksha and the Queen of All Saints level. Not to mention, Noah also possessed all 24 sovereign suns into another cosmology. Even Pest had no choice but to admit this. The current Noah had already grown to a level that surpassed her imagination. Although she had always felt that Noah possessed limitless possibilities and would definitely occupy a place in the box court in the future, Pest did not expect that this day would actually come so quickly. However, Pest had no reason to be unhappy. That was because, with the current Noah's ability, accomplishing his wish was something that could be done with a wave of his hand. As for the consequences of erasing the history of the Black Death, Pest no longer had to worry about it. After all, the matter of Noah massacring all the gods of over 100 god groups had already spread throughout the entire box court. With this, which idiot would dare to cause trouble for Noah? If the history of the Black Death was erased, the interests of a portion of the god groups and demon kings would indeed be affected. However, before Noah's frightening battle achievements, those fellows would most likely not dare to voice their anger. Thus, Pest's mood could be said to be very relaxed. At first, I thought this wish was almost impossible to realize. To the previous Pest, becoming enemies with a group of gods and demon kings was no different from courting death. Because of that, the desire to eliminate the Black Death had always been a very heavy desire in Pest's heart. However, ever since she met Noah, Pest's situation changed completely. Perhaps this is also a matter of fate. Pest no longer had any complaints toward her master, Noah. In fact, after the day Pest poured out her wish to Noah, she had already made a vow in her heart. Since you have shouldered all of my burden, then I will also strive to become an indispensable existence by your side. With this determination in mind, Pest accepted Athena's training. The reason why Pest was able to reach 4 digits in level in a short month was because she still had a lot of potential that could be developed. It was also because of her determination. To put it bluntly, the current Pest no longer had any disloyalty toward Noah. Although what I possess is only determination, it cannot compare to the loyalty of my colleagues. With that thought in mind, Pest turned around and looked in Letitia's direction. There Letitia was listening to Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit, and the others' excited conversation with a smile on her face. At this moment Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit and the others were, without a doubt, talking about Noah. They were talking about how Noah had become the ruler of the upper echelon, how he had allowed May to reach 5 digits in level, how he had managed to retrieve all of his past wealth, and how he would be able to recover his past glory in a short period of time. While they were happily discussing this, they were also praising Noah for his contributions and achievements. Hearing these praises and admiration for Noah, Letitia felt happy from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps even Letitia herself did not notice this. If someone were to give a good evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel very happy. If someone were to give a bad evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel extremely dissatisfied. Evidently, this purebred vampire was sincerely proud of her master's achievements and abilities. She had placed all of her heart and soul on Noah. Compared to Letitia, Pest felt that her determination was inferior. This caused Pest to feel extremely displeased. What's so great about that? Sooner or later, I will also have such loyalty toward my master. Pest did not notice that her thoughts were very close to jealousy. Letitia was able to place all of her heart and soul on Noah, dedicating her heart and soul to Noah. Pest, who was unable to do the same, was feeling jealous. I am also master's subordinate. Feeling that she had lost to Letitia, Pest glared at Letitia with an extremely unreconciled expression. Amen. Letitia seemed to have sensed something strange. She turned her head around and looked in Pest's direction. When she saw Pest glaring fiercely at her, she was involuntarily startled. She spoke in a suspicious manner. What's wrong, Pest? It's nothing. Pest turned her head away as if she was throwing a tantrum. I just wanted to tell you, Letitia, my strength is already in the 4 digits now. I am not inferior to you. Oh, Letitia's beautiful brows were slightly raised. As if she had seen through the unreconciled and jealous feelings in Pest's heart, she said with a smile that was not a smile. However, strength does not mean everything. Rather than comparing the disparity between your battle power and mine, why don't you think about how to brew black tea, iron your clothes and hone your ability to do housework? That would be of great help to your master. Woo! Pest was immediately rendered speechless as if her weak point had been poked. Facing this, Letitia merely looked at Pest with a joyous expression. This caused Pest to feel a sense of superiority. The corners of her mouth started twitching. Aren't you just a bit more adorable than me, a bit more powerful than me, a bit more knowledgeable than me, a bit more likable than me, and a bit more doted on by that guy than me? What's there to be arrogant about? Just as Letitia and Pest were carrying out an unknown comparison between mates, Noah finally returned. Noah's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. Mr. Noah! Black Rabbit's rabbit ears twitched slightly. Just as she was about to pounce toward Noah and ask about the progress of the matter, she suddenly stopped and shut her mouth. It was not only Black Rabbit. The others also subconsciously stopped talking. This caused the entire Hall of No Name to become deathly silent. There was only a single reason for such a situation to occur. That was Noah's brows were deeply furrowed. An undissolvable sorrow could be seen between his brows. Seeing Noah in such a state, for some unknown reason, Pest's mood became somewhat restless. Master? Letitia spoke in confusion. Did something happen? Only after entering the hall did Noah raise his head. His gaze swept past the faces of his little companions. In the end, his gaze was fixed on Pest. The anxiety in Pest's heart immediately grew even stronger. This caused her tone to become somewhat uneasy. What's wrong? Sensing Pest's uneasiness, Noah laughed bitterly. He took a deep breath and patted his cheeks to pull himself together. My apologies, Pest. There is something that I wish to discuss with you first. Pest immediately sensed that this matter was not simple. At the same time, she also understood that this matter was greatly related to her. Thus, she could only nod her head. Soon after, before the confused gazes of the crowd, Noah and Pest entered the room. An hour later, Noah and Pest came out from the room. Although they did not know what Noah and Pest were talking about, Pest's eyes were red after coming out from the room. There were even traces of tears on her young and tender face. It was clear that she had cried. This caused the crowd to be extremely shocked. Of course, that was not the most important thing. What truly caused an uproar was a matter that Noah announced after that. Chapter 16:16. Defeating Aziz Dakaha was only yesterday. During the celebration banquet last night, almost everyone in the vampire's castle drank until they were dead drunk. Even after waking up the next day, they were still full of joy. However, the matter of the humans' final trial was already over. Next, the various communities in the vampire's castle would have to return to their respective bases. Therefore, although the joy in their hearts did not disappear, the wise leaders of the communities had already begun to plan with their companions how to deal with the aftermath and develop after returning. Before Noah's return, the various communities in the vampire's castle had formed an alliance army and challenged Az Dakaha. That battle compared to the previous day was really too tragic. Almost every community had casualties and losses. After that, although under the leadership of Sarah and Shadora, the communities jointly held a memorial service to let the dead rest in peace, the casualties still caused these communities to suffer losses in the end. In order to make up for these comrades who had died bravely in battle, many communities had to start thinking about recruiting people. Of course, this was no longer a difficult thing to do. This was because the communities that had participated in Az Dakaha's battle had now become one of the hottest topics in people's mouths. Although it was not as outrageous as Noah's, the reputation of the communities that had participated in the battle had also increased. It was believed that with this point alone, these communities would be able to make a name for themselves, recruit good members, and even expand their forces and develop in all aspects, right? With the fact and merit of participating in the battle against the humans' final trial, there were even some communities in the vampire's castle that were prepared to submit an application to the ruler of the hierarchy to be promoted to a higher level. Therefore, the loss of the communities was only temporary. Soon, the communities that had participated in the battle against Az Dakaha would recover to their former level and expand further, right? It was precisely because of this benefit that many communities came to participate in the battle. After all, not all communities had the resolve to protect everyone in the box from the hands of the Demon King. Among the communities that came to participate in the battle, some were doing it in the name of righteousness, some were doing it for the sake of this merit, and some even just wanted to gain merit. However, no matter what the reason was, these communities did not hesitate to fight with their lives on the line. They had fought bravely until now. This was a fact that had to be acknowledged. Therefore, people still had to acknowledge the meritorious officials. However, at this critical juncture, a shocking piece of news began to spread throughout the vampire's castle. Have you heard? Lord Noah's no name was preparing to head to the Western District, crusade against another human in the final trial. Well, what? Are you kidding me? Weren't all the humans defeated in the final trial? That's right. Undoubtedly, Az Dakaha is the last human in the final trial, right? Who's talking nonsense over there? No name will head to the Western District and crusade against another human in the final trial. The news spread like wildfire. Nobody knew when it started, but it had spread throughout the entire castle of vampires. It even went out of the castle and set off an uproar in the entire courtyard. That was to be expected. It must be known that the humans in the final trial were given the title of God Slayer. They could even wipe out the gods in the heavenly realm. The entire courtyard would be shaken, threatening the existence of the entire human history. Although there had been many such existences in the past, Az Dakaha was the last one to do so. Now that Az Dakaha had been defeated, where did another human in the final trial come from? Could it be that after the fall of the three-headed dragon, another element of destruction had appeared in human history, giving birth to a new human in the final trial? For a moment there was a lot of talk, causing those communities that were preparing to set off and return to their bases to start developing to have no choice but to give up on their plans and prepare to investigate the truth. Thus, the leaders of the communities all headed towards the direction of the throne hall, intending to find a group of rulers and ask them what was going on. As a result, the entire minister's seat hall was completely surrounded. After that, Noah personally came out of the throne hall and admitted to this matter in front of everyone. After Noah admitted to the truth of this matter, White Yuksha, Sarah, and Shadora also came out of the throne hall and announced that as the rulers of the eastern, southern, and northern regions, they would fully support No Name and head to the western district to defeat the humans in the final trial. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire castle of vampires was in an uproar. The entire courtyard was also in an uproar. All the communities that were preparing to return to their bases could only give up on the plans in their hearts. After a day of buffer, the next day, all the communities that were still in Castle of Vampires all volunteered to follow Noah and the others to the Western District to deal with the humans in the final trial. Regarding this, Noah personally came out again and solemnly thanked everyone. He also announced that after the Demon King of the dystopia was defeated, he would take over the position of White Yuksha and become the ruler of the Eastern District. This news caused the entire courtyard to be in an uproar again. Especially the people in the Eastern District, after knowing that Noah was about to become the ruler of the Eastern District, they were all overjoyed. Compared to these two matters, the announcement of other trivial matters became less eye-catching. For example, as the community of the rulers of the Eastern District, the matter of No Name being promoted to a 5-digit number became commonplace. Moreover, many communities were also promoted by the rulers of the Eastern District. The matter of them being promoted also did not become too eye-catching. Among these matters, there were only two things worth mentioning. 1. The community of Will-O-Wisp, who was known as the strongest demon in the Northern District, would migrate to the Eastern District and form an alliance with No Name to develop together. 2. The communities that belonged to the many god groups in the heavenly realm who had been avoiding battle all began to gather in Castle of Vampires. They voluntarily volunteered and expressed their willingness to work with No Name to fight the Dystopia Demon King in the Western District. Obviously, this time the gods in the heavenly realm had completely dispelled the idea of abandoning the courtyard, and were ready to stand on the same front as Noah. This approach had the intention of easing the relationship between them, and also the intention of using the battle with the dystopian Demon King to wash away the previous stigma. Under such circumstances, the various conflicts between the Alliance Army and the God Group Army in Castle of Vampires would be a story for later. And when the entire courtyard was in an uproar finally, the news of the final trial of humans in the Western District began to be confirmed. 3 days later, with No Name as the leader, all the communities that gathered in Castle of Vampires began to move towards the Western District. As a result, the battle with the Dystopia Demon King lasted for nearly a month. A month later, Noah single-handedly defeated the Dystopia Demon King and killed him with his own hands. Finally, peace was restored to the entire courtyard. In the battle with the Dystopia Demon King, because Noah took the lead, there were miraculously no casualties. It would be better to say that in order not to let his decision kill innocent bystanders, Noah tried his best to avoid casualties, which led to this result. After killing the Dystopia Demon King, Noah returned to the Eastern District and officially took over the position of the ruler of the hierarchy from White Yuksha, becoming the guardian of order in the Eastern District. In this way, White Yuksha finally unloaded a heavy burden and prepared to go to the heavenly realm. In order to reward White Yuksha, who had been the ruler of the hierarchy for a long time and had done his best for the Eastern District, Noah held a farewell party. Lord Noah! Lord Noah! At the scene of the farewell party, as soon as Noah entered the venue, he was immediately welcomed by everyone. Flood Dragon Lu saw Noah from afar, raised his hand, and shouted at Noah, "Little brother Noah! Over here!" Seeing this, Noah suddenly smiled, raised his feet, and walked over. Chapter 16-17. The location of the farewell party was naturally in the Eastern District. Moreover, it was in an outer sect in the Eastern District that was rated as having the most beautiful environment. It was an area where cherry blossoms would unbelievably bloom all year long. Noah spent his own money and rented an entire piece of land in a corner of this area to hold the banquet. The races from the Eastern District, Southern District, Northern District, and even the Western District all came to attend the banquet. Orcs, mirage beasts, elves, demons, and even Rakshasa. All the races from the 4 districts of Boxcourt had come to the scene. They surrounded the cloth mats that were spread directly on the lawn that was full of cherry blossom trees. They enjoyed good wine and good food while chatting and laughing. Noah responded to everyone's greetings as he walked past the seats and came to where Jiao Lu was. Other than Jiao Lu, there were also Jialing, 16 knights, Sarah, and Shadora. Sarah and Shadora are here too? Noah greeted Sarah and Shadora and then looked at 16 knights with a helpless smile. I was wondering where you went. So you've been here for a long time? After all, we're not as busy as the ruler of the hierarchy. If we came early, we could have encountered many good things, right? 16 knights showed a provocative expression and shrugged. In fact, there were many good things. Now we're listening to 2 of the 7 days of the legend of bravery with the gods in the heaven realm. Compared with what little brother Noah has done in the past 2 months, what we have done is nothing. Lu Jiao said with a wry smile. Little brother 16th Knight, why did you have to mention this in front of little brother Noah? Aren't you just trying to embarrass us? So it turns out that the renowned rock demon king actually still cares about this sort of thing. 16th Knight laughed loudly. Don't mind it. I can guarantee that it's not that your legend of bravery isn't good enough. It's just that little brother broke the rules too much and can't be compared to him. What do you mean I broke the rules too much? Noah sat down under Sarah and Shadora's greeting. He picked up a glass of wine and said in an annoyed tone. The 7-day war back then was said to have split the entire Hakata into 2. Compared to that, what I'm doing is just a small matter, right? A small fight. Jialing said in a coquettish manner. If what you've done in the past 2 months is just a small matter, then we really don't have the face to see anyone. That's right. Jiao Lu echoed. Who can be like little brother Noah, single-handedly killing 2 humans in the final trial, sealing 1,000,000 deities, slaughtering all the deities of over 100 deities, and gathering the sovereignty of all 24 sons? Not to mention, you've also gained the approval of absolute evil, and been entrusted with Avesta's another cosmology, Jialing said with a hint of delight. I clearly remember when you used Avesta's another cosmology in the battle against the dystopian demon king, the expressions of the deities under the command of the deities. Jiao Lu, 16 knights, Sarah, and Shadora all smiled when Jialing mentioned it. Even Noah couldn't help but smile. Compared to absolute evil, the demon king who had the title of closed world was definitely stronger, not weaker. When dealing with the 3-headed dragon, because of the 3-headed dragon's another cosmology, Noah's another cosmology was of no use at all. However, when dealing with the dystopia, Noah's 2 another cosmology finally came in handy. With the having effect of illusory star Tai Sui on Ling and the imitation effect of Avesta, Noah fully utilized the power of the 2 another cosmology in the battle against the dystopia, weakening the enemy and strengthening himself. However, the dystopia demon king was still a human in the final trial, and there was indeed an extremely tricky part. Not to mention other things, because the demon king's nature as a godslayer was more against the rules than the 3-headed dragon. At the beginning of the battle, Noah's authority was completely restrained, and he almost failed miserably. Fortunately, Noah's authority had long since transformed into his own power under his own constitution, and it was no longer the power of a god. To a certain extent, he was no longer restricted by the dystopia demon king. Under the power of this demon king that could even weaken the faith of a god, if it were any other god other than Noah, not to mention using their power, they might even be instantly killed, right? Because of this, Pest, a 4-digit death god, did not even dare to enter the battlefield. She hid in the rear and was responsible for providing support. Needless to say, she was very sullen. In the end, even Noah was forced to use both of his another cosmology. Only then was he able to turn the tables on the dystopia demon king. Even so, the dystopia demon king still managed to last for an entire month before being killed. From this, it could be seen that the human in the final trial was definitely not much weaker than the 3-headed dragon. Other than Noah, there was probably no one else in the entire box who could fight the dystopia demon king one-on-one. After this battle, the matter of Noah obtaining Avesta was completely exposed. The expressions of the communities under the command of the gods of the celestial realms were very interesting. Thinking up to this point, Noah looked at Jiao Lu, Jialing, Sarah and Shadora and said very solemnly, "Thank you very much, everyone." Everyone present knew the inside story of why Noah would go up against the dystopia demon king. After explaining everything to Pest and making the decision to fulfill Pest's wish of reviving the dystopia demon king, Noah explained the inside story to these people. Thus, disregarding the Alliance Army and the God Army, those who were closer to Noah were all people who knew the inside story. However, after Noah made this decision, Although everyone was extremely shocked and had all sorts of reactions, some even voiced their objections, in the end they all agreed with Noah. Because of my own stubbornness, I caused everyone to pointlessly engage in a battle that required them to put their lives on the line. I am very sorry. Noah sighed. Although I have said the same words many times, I still feel that I have to say them. You are too serious, little brother Noah. Zhao Lu laughed in spite of himself. After I was enlightened by you, didn't I already tell you to leave your back to me? That promise was not only effective in the battle against Az Dakaha. Jialing smiled sweetly. You are the person that big sister acknowledged. In the past month or so, we have fully witnessed the righteousness and ability in your heart. Following you to battle everywhere is something that we are willing to do. To be honest, at the beginning we were also shocked. Sarah recalled the matter at that time and couldn't help but sigh. He actually took the initiative to resurrect humans in the final trial. That is really unheard of. If I didn't believe that Mr. Noah is not the kind of person who would let innocent people fall into the abyss of suffering, I would have stood up to object no matter what, right? On the other hand, Mr. Noah is willing to bear the burden of resurrecting and killing humans in the final trial for a subordinate. Although it is very scary, it makes people feel that you are trustworthy, Shadora said in a childish voice. Lord White Yuksha must also trust Mr. Noah, which is why he agreed to resurrect dystopia with you, right? That's it, little brother. 16th Night patted Noah's shoulder. Although it was your stubbornness with your efforts, we did not suffer any casualties. That is enough. Okay. Noah raised his wine cup. I won't say any more. Let me offer you a toast. Everyone smiled and raised their wine cups, drinking it in one gulp. Chapter 1618. Bang! Just as Noah, Zhao Lu, Jialing, Sarah, Shadora, and 16th Night were happily drinking, a loud noise rang out, causing the entire ground to tremble. Following the loud noise, a huge water column shot up into the sky from the center of the banquet hall. It only fell after reaching hundreds of meters in the air. At the same time, screams rang out in the air. Those screams were coming from the mouths of the people around them. When the water column shot up into the sky, a group of people was also swept up into the air along with the water column. Then they fell to the ground with a series of screams. Looking at this scene, Noah was more or less in a daze. Soon after, he finally saw the situation in the direction of the rising water pillar. There was a lake there. In the center of the lake, a circular platform floated on the water surface. White Yuksha, who was wearing a kimono, stood on the platform and waved the fan in his hand with a joyful expression. Every time White Yuksha waved the fan, the entire lake would shake with the water column, sending the rest of the people on the platform into the air. They screamed as they fell to the ground. Regarding this, the surrounding crowd not only clapped and cheered, but they also eagerly rushed to the platform in the center of the lake. Then, they were mercilessly sent flying by White Yuksha's water column. It was like a performance, causing Noah to be a little stunned. What's going on? Are you talking about that? 16th Night glanced at the platform in the center of the lake and said casually, That's the entertainment program hosted by White Yuksha. Entertainment program? Noah blinked and looked in Sarah's direction. Sensing Noah's gaze, Sarah explained. After arriving at the scene, Lord White Yuksha claimed that eating and drinking wasn't very satisfying. So he occupied the lake and hosted a bestowment game in the center of the lake. The general rule is that as long as you can push Lord White Yuksha out of the platform, the challenger will win. Even if they lose, they can continue to challenge until the banquet ends, Shadora continued. If you can win, then as the former ruler of the East District, Lord White Yuksha will reward the victor. It's a pity that although you only need to push him out of the platform to win, that kind of head-on confrontation is incomparable to the White Knight King, who is the strongest among the star spirits, right? Zhao Lu shrugged. Even if all the capable people in the East, West, South and North regions are gathered here, without a 3-digit level, it would be difficult to even make the White Knight King move, let alone push him out of the arena. Even so, there are still many people who wish to participate. Jialing curled his lips. My opponent is a monster ranked in the top 10 of the boxers. In a situation where it's just a simple challenge, there are as many people who want to fight the White Knight King as there are stars in the sky. If I can last for a while, not only will I be an individual, but even the community's reputation will increase greatly, right? It's because of this that White Yaksha organized that game, right? Noah was speechless. That fellow is already planning to leave, yet she still caused so much trouble. Well, no matter what, it's the last time. 16th Knight raised his wine cup and said very casually, after today, who knows when I can return to the lower realm. Let her cause trouble. Under the circumstances of returning the godhood, White Yaksha was an individual who did not belong to any sect in the heaven realm. As for people like White Yaksha and the great sage, heaven's equal, who had great power but did not show any loyalty or affiliation to any sect, clan or group of gods, they were always the targets that the gods were wary of. Therefore, unless White Yaksha could convert to Buddhism and obtain the godhood, he could suppress his power and confirm his affiliation, allowing the gods to more or less be at ease. Otherwise, he would not be allowed to return to the lower realm as he pleased. By the time White Yaksha retrieved the godhood and returned to the lower realm, who knew how long he would have to wait? After all, if the godhood could be returned and retrieved as one wished, then the matters in the world would not be so troublesome. It was because of this that everyone allowed White Yaksha to cause trouble, right? However, in order to defeat the White Knight King in a head-on confrontation, there is only one person in the entire Hakkada's 4 regions who can do such a thing. 16th Knight said to Noah with an insufferably arrogant attitude. How about it? Aren't you going to give it a try? Me? Noah swirled the wine in the wine cup in his hand, his dark and deep eyes reflecting some interest. To be able to exchange blows with someone who is ranked in the top 10 of the boxers, and only 17 of them in the double digits, it's not that I'm not interested. I think you should consider it carefully before taking action, Zhao Lu said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If I let the two of you, who stand at the pinnacle of the boxers, fight, then not only that platform but the entire outer sect district will suffer, right? Second brother is right. Even Zhao Ling showed a rare expression of bitterness. Little brother Noah, you've just become the ruler of the East District. Don't tell me you're thinking of completely destroying your own territory? Sarah and Shadora immediately nodded furiously, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. Compared to the 2 rulers of the East District, these 2 rulers who were ranked in the top 5 were simply child's play. Noah naturally understood what everyone was worried about. However, Noah had to participate in White Yaksha's game. You all know that in a direct confrontation, only I can defeat White Yaksha here. It's even more impossible for White Yaksha to not know. Noah scratched his cheek. So, that game of bestowment was obviously prepared for me to participate. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after they nodded thoughtfully. Boom! At this moment, a water column shot up into the sky from the center of the lake, and a large group of people were sent flying. This time, among the people who fell from the sky, there were even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, and Pest. A few girls screamed as they fell from the sky. With a series of plop sounds, they fell into the lake. Noah covered his face and couldn't bear to look at it. Those girls actually went to challenge him too? The girls in our community are really competitive. 16th Knight was dumbfounded. Although they participated in 2 battles against the humans in the final trial and increased their strength a lot, they still can't challenge the strongest species of the Star Elves, right? It seems that I have to go. Noah sighed. After putting down the wine cup in his hand, he stood up. Then I'll go and meet White Yaksha. After speaking without giving everyone time to react, Noah directly dodged and jumped high. After drawing a perfect parabola in the air, he landed on the platform in the center of the lake. Oh! The expression on White Yaksha's face finally became serious, but his smile was getting wider. You're finally willing to come up? Kid, you're indeed waiting for me. Noah curled his lips and smiled. You want to use this battle to tell the people in the East District that I, your successor, have the real ability to sit in your position? That's one of the reasons. Other than that, I personally hope to be able to fight with you. White Yaksha opened the fan in his hand and covered the lower half of his face, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. To be able to defeat the hero of the final trial twice, how can I, the White Knight Monarch, not confirm his ability with my own hands? Noah didn't expect White Yaksha to say such a thing. He was first surprised, then he revealed a smile. If that's the case, then bring it on. Of course. White Yaksha laughed loudly. Accept the challenge of the White Knight Demon King, the hero of humanity. In the end, The battle lasted until the evening. In the end, when the entire lake evaporated completely, White Yuksha took the initiative to admit defeat, allowing Noah to win. After that, White Yuksha didn't say goodbye to anyone and left silently, returning to the heaven realm. Chapter 16:19. Outer Gate of Box 2105380. The base of the community, no name. Phew! In the hall's vast bathing area, Noah soaked his body in the warm water. As he let out a sigh of relief, he smiled bitterly. It's one thing for White Yuksha to leave without saying goodbye, but he actually left behind such a huge mess for me to clean up. After the farewell party ended, White Yuksha slipped away in an extremely carefree manner. However, as the organizer of the banquet and the leader of the East District, Noah had to clean up the mess. For example, he had to arrange for people to send back the people who had completely collapsed from drinking. For example, he had to clean up the mess left behind by the banquet. Another example was to restore the lake that had evaporated due to the intense battle to its original state. Arranging things one after another exhausted Noah. However, I never expected White Yuksha to be so strong. He's indeed worthy of being ranked in the top 10 strongest species in Box Court. In order to not cause too much of a disaster, Noah and White Yuksha subconsciously controlled their powers. This only resulted in the evaporation of a lake. Of course, although they controlled their powers, in order to determine who was stronger, Noah and White Yuksha both used some of their true abilities. The degree of power they controlled also seemed to be blessed with good fortune, and they controlled it more or less. Even so, Noah was still forced into desperate straits by White Yuksha several times. If not for the various abilities of the 10 incarnations, which allowed him to constantly switch between incarnations, as well as the power of many treasures, which allowed him to avert all kinds of dangers, Noah would have been injured long ago. In return for politeness, Noah did not let White Yuksha off easily. He personally sent the strongest Sun Star spirit into danger several times. At Noah and White Yuksha's level, even if they showed mercy, the battle would definitely be dangerous if they really fought. Therefore, this was not strange at all. However, it was only natural that the onlookers would be frightened out of their wits when they saw this. Unfortunately, if I don't use another cosmology, I won't be able to win easily. In the battle with White Yuksha, Noah deliberately did not use the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Otherwise, Noah only needed to use one of Avesta and illusory star Taisui to defeat White Yuksha. However, Noah wanted to verify the difference between him and White Yuksha, who stood at the peak of Box Court, without using another cosmology. From the looks of it, if I use 4 incarnations at the same time, I can indeed match an existence like White Yuksha, who has a 2-digit number. During this period of time, Noah had sealed 1,000,000 deities, slaughtered thousands of deities, and killed 2 humans in the final trial. He had long since accumulated a lot of EXP and great achievements. Therefore, after updating his ability value, Noah's ability value also received a huge improvement, allowing Noah to use 4 incarnations at the same time. Moreover, that's not my limit. Noah silently measured his strength. With my current ability value, even if I use 5 incarnations at the same time, I can still maintain it for a long time, right? Once he used 5 incarnations at the same time, Noah was confident that even if he did not use another cosmology, he could firmly suppress existences at the level of White Yuksha and Halloween Queen. In other words, now, even if he did not calculate another cosmology, Noah had the ability to stand at the peak of Box Court. In the past few months in Box Court, I've improved a lot, Noah said. However, even so, I still can't use Sun sovereignty to draw out the possibility of the body. Just now, Noah had the ability to stand at the peak of Box Court. If he could draw out the possibility of the body that even all 24 Sun sovereignty could not successfully draw out, and turn all the potential in the body into strength, it was hard for Noah to imagine what kind of realm he could reach. Logically speaking, with such a large capital and enough power to dominate Box Court, Noah should be satisfied. However, in Noah's heart, there was a shadow that could not make him feel satisfied. On the day that he used all 24 Sun sovereignty to try to draw out the possibility of the body but failed, Noah saw the eye in his dream. Until now, Noah still remembered. At that time when he was stared at by the eye, his whole body trembled and felt fear. Thinking of this, Noah's hand that was soaked in the water slowly clenched into a fist. Then what is it? It was not that Noah did not have his own speculations about the existence of the eye, but it was only a guess after all. Noah felt that if he did not confirm this guess, he might be upset for the rest of his life. It's time to leave. The soft murmuring sound echoed clearly in the spacious and quiet bathing area. So much so that other than Noah, the other two people present also heard this sentence clearly. Leave? I knew it would turn out like this. The sudden voice startled Noah and woke him up. Immediately after, Noah discovered something. Unknowingly, two petite young girls had also soaked in the water. They were leaning against his body, one on his left and one on his right. Your vigilance is too low, Master, Letitia said jokingly. If you don't feel anything when being so close to you, all the legendary deeds you've accomplished all this time will be greatly discounted. Are you thinking about something complicated? Pest muttered with a bored tone. Then it's not impossible to discuss it with us, right? The two young maids that belonged to Noah were like this. One had a calm expression while the other had a slightly red face. However, neither of them chose to escape. Instead, they openly leaned against Noah's shoulder. Of course, the two young girls were completely naked. Their tender yet unique bodies were faintly discernible as they soaked in the hot water. They actually possessed a terrifying charm. Undoubtedly, the two young girls had the appearance of 11 or 12 years old girls. Yet they possessed such charm. Those who saw them, regardless of whether they were men or women, could imagine how beautiful they would be when they grew up to become mature women. Even Noah couldn't help but be startled. He asked almost subconsciously, "When did you two come in?" "We've been here for a while." Letitia's deep red eyes looked straight at Noah. It would appear that Master is truly thinking about something very complicated. You don't even know when we came in. I was only dragged in by Letitia. Pest resisted from the bottom of her heart. Really, I wouldn't want to come in a bathhouse. I know that bathhouses were not popularized in the era when you were still alive. It is only natural that you are not used to it. However, you should be used to it by now, right? Letitia glanced at Pest and smiled. Besides, even though you said you were resisting, didn't you still obediently come in the moment I told you that Master was here and needed us to serve him? So annoying, Pest said impatiently. There's no need to mention that sort of thing. Seeing the two young maids quarreling before him, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This sort of scene was actually very common in the month he spent fighting against the Demon King of Dystopia. At an unknown point in time, Letitia and Pest's relationship had undergone some subtle changes. In the past, Letitia had been firmly suppressing Pest. Pest was suppressed to the point that she did not even dare to show her temper. Now, for some unknown reason, Letitia no longer paid attention to Pest's occasional rude behavior. At the same time that Pest felt fear toward Letitia, she would occasionally summon up her courage to resist. It was as if she planned to fight for something with Letitia. Yet Letitia was enjoying it. Thus, the relationship between the two of them became as subtle as it was now. After quarreling for a while, Letitia stopped speaking. She turned around and looked at Noah. Master, are you really planning to leave? Chapter 16:20. Master, are you really planning to leave? Letitia's question caused the atmosphere in the vast bathing area to become somewhat heavy. At this moment, regardless of whether it was Letitia or Pest, both of them revealed expressions of reluctance. One must know that even though Letitia and Pest both appeared to be 11 or 12 years old girls, one of them had actually lived for at least 1,000 years. As for the other, even if she hadn't lived for 1,000 years, she'd still lived for several hundred years. Furthermore, Letitia was the type of person who would not reveal a weak appearance. Pest was also the type of person who would not please others in all aspects. The two of them were not the type to easily reveal their true emotions. Under such circumstances, the two girls still could not help but reveal expressions of reluctance. From this, one could imagine that Letitia and Pest truly did not wish to see Noah leave from the bottom of their hearts. The two girls were saved by Noah. Noah had pulled Letitia and Pest out of the abyss of vengeance. He had also helped the two girls accomplish their wishes. In the hearts of the two girls, he had long since become the closest person to them. There was no other. Because of this, Noah's departure would inevitably cause Letitia and Pest to feel some reluctance. However, Noah's departure was something that could not be changed. I also have my own matters that I need to attend to, Noah sighed. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. Although I act like a great person in front of you, I'm actually someone who hasn't even solved my own problems. If I can't even solve my own problems, then there's no need to talk about continuing to stay by your side. That's right. Even though Noah had managed to resolve Letitia and Pest's matters, all this time, Noah had yet to even resolve his own matters. When he was born, he possessed the appearance, intelligence, and age of 10 years old. He possessed the 3 great constitutions that others did not possess. Only he alone was able to transcend the boundaries of the world and enter the space between worlds. Additionally, he also possessed the mission of restoring the destroyed worlds and receiving the care of the worlds. All of these proved Noah's uniqueness. In the eyes of others, Noah was someone who even the gods of the heavenly realm feared. He was someone who could single-handedly suppress humans in the final trial. He stood at the peak of humanity as a human. All of his deeds could only be described as legendary. But in fact, just like what Noah said, even though he achieved achievements that others couldn't achieve in one world after another, he was still a person who didn't even know his own origin. It wasn't that Noah hadn't thought about unraveling the mystery surrounding him. However, Gaia and Alea had never revealed anything to Noah, which proved that the time was not yet right. In the end, Noah could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and travel from one world to another while thinking of ways to increase his strength. To put it nicely, this kind of life was one of being positive and striving to find the opportunity to solve the puzzle in one's body as soon as possible. To put it bluntly, it was just going with the flow. Now, Noah felt that he shouldn't continue like this. Both Gaia and Alea had told Noah that Noah would understand everything one day, if he wholeheartedly increased his strength. And now, Noah had already increased his strength to the point where he could be considered a peak existence even in this world where gods and Buddhas were everywhere and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs. Noah didn't know if this level of strength could reach Gaia and Alea's standards. However, Noah didn't want to wait any longer. After seeing that terrifying eye in his dream, Noah felt that it was time for him to move forward. Even an evil god like Izidakaha had his own path and resolutely walked to the end without the slightest regret. As the person who defeated him, if I don't even know my own path, how can I have the face to claim that I defeated him? Noah said from the bottom of his heart as he extended his hand and unconsciously rubbed Letitia and Pest's little heads. So no matter what, I have to take a step forward. Even if it's just a small step, it'll be fine. Noah's words allowed Letitia and Pest to clearly sense their master's determination. Although I don't know what master is concerned about, I believe that Master's decision is correct, Letitia said sincerely. Since that's the case, we won't say anything else. Just because you don't have anything to say doesn't mean that I don't have anything to say, Pest retorted. She looked at Noah with a somewhat unreconciled gaze. I only want to ask, is there nothing I can help you with? No matter how small the matter is? Even if you ask, I don't know, Noah said with a wry smile. There are still many things that I don't understand. I'm also confused about what I should do. I don't even know what I should do. How am I supposed to ask you for help? At this moment, even Pest was at a loss for words. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. For the sake of helping Pest fulfill her wish, Noah did not hesitate to revive the humans in the final trial. Furthermore, for the sake of not letting this decision lead to the sacrifice of a single person, he worked hard for an entire month. Pest had witnessed the entire process. Although she did not say anything, Pest's gratitude and gratitude toward Noah had accumulated to a point where it could explode at any moment. If possible, Pest only hoped that she would be able to help Noah. Now, it would appear that this wish of hers was nothing more than an extravagant hope. Seeing the extremely strong unwillingness in Pest's eyes, the bitter smile on Noah's face grew even stronger. He began to rub Pest's head with even more strength. He continued to rub Pest's head. What are you doing? Pest began to struggle in a flurry. Don't mess with my hair like that. Noah ignored Pest's protest and continued to rub Pest's hair. He even poured water on it and began to wash Pest's hair. Without giving Pest another chance to protest, Noah directly said, If you really want to help me, then help me. If you really want to help me, then work with Letitia and help me deal with the work of the Stratum Dominator. The work of the Stratum Ruler. Pest was startled. That's right. Noah nodded his head. His tone was somewhat gentle. I've said it before. I also have my own matters that I need to take care of. However, that does not mean that I can ignore the matters of the people around me for the sake of my own matters. My companions and friends are also in this box. I do not wish to see any accidents happen to them, Noah said with a smile as he washed Pest's hair. Thus, during this period of time that I am not around, I hope that the two of you can help me protect everything that I cherish. Hearing those words, Pest's struggling slowly stopped. She glared at Noah as if she was throwing a tantrum. Truly cunning. What? Noah chuckled. Why? Is that not the case? Pest muttered. Now that you've said it like that, I am unable to refuse. Who said that? Noah rolled his eyes. Am I the type of person who would force others to do something they are unwilling to do? That is why I said that you are very cunning. Pest said loudly. Since this is something that you want to do, how could I not be willing to do it? Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but laugh. In that case, are you willing to help me? My adorable little maid? I am not your maid. I am only your subordinate. Pest turned her head away. However, since this is Master's order, I can only obey. Truly not frank, Letitia smiled sweetly. However, I feel the same way as Pest. Since this is something that Master treasures, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will help you protect it. Then it's settled. Noah immediately said. Letitia, Pest, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, the two of you must protect the things that I cherish. Letitia and Pest both had serious expressions on their faces as they nodded their heads heavily. In the next moment, Noah suddenly extended his hands and embraced Letitia and Pest. Also, don't forget that the two of you are also things that I cherish. The two of you must sacrifice your lives to properly protect yourselves. Those words caused Letitia and Pest's hearts to warm up. Lying in Noah's embrace, they nodded their heads heavily again.